Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and you're watching TechStrong TV. Today's Monday, February 1st. That's right, February 1st. It seems like New Year's was yesterday, but we're in February, and welcome. Welcome to February. We've got a great TechStrong TV show lined up for you today. We've got some great guests, some news. Let me tell you all about it. Our first guest today is Joel Fulton. Joel used to be the CISO over at Splunk, a bunch of other companies before that. And Joel is the co-founder, CEO of a new company now called Lucidum, Lucidum. And Lucidum is all about asset discovery. Who, what, when is on your network, and allowing you to make heads or tails of that and have a better handle on it. It's a great concept. They just came out of stealth around Halloween, though they've been at it now for a little over a year. We'll catch up with Joel. He'll tell you more all about that. After Joel, I'm really happy to be joined by Frank Rowe and Greg Nicastro. Greg's an old friend of mine from the security world, and he's recently joined Smartbear as EVP GM for product and technology. So we have Greg and Smartbear CEO Frank Rowe on, and we had a really great talk about the market, about Smartbear, their product line, their strategy, and what we might see from them. So good stuff there, and I wish Greg a lot of success there. Next up after that, we're going to have actually this is part one of the second episode of Haunted Hacker that we're playing, and that's with none other than Mike Jones, who's a co-founder of the Anonymous Hacktivist Group. And you know, whether Anonymous obviously has some murky kind of beginnings, and whatever your feelings are on that, Mike is a very, very competent security guy, and he has some top guests on here, and I hope you'll like it. His shows are typically sort of like an hour long, so we're breaking them into parts. This is part one of episode 2 that we're showing. After that, I'll be back to introduce something old. Our something old today goes all the way back to DevOps Enterprise Summit, and it's with Orit Golowinski, the DevOps Journey. And we'll tell you more about that in a bit. And then I'll turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our Chief Content Officer, Managing Editor here. And Charlene, of course, will have the news around the media ops sites for today, as well as a great preview in what promises to be a fantastic but busy week of webinars, if you're interested in finding out what we have on store there, or in store there. And then Charlene's video today is with Sarah Tatsis of BlackBerry, and discussion around cybersecurity talent shortage and how women are key to filling the gap. Amen. Should be a good one. I'm interested in that. And then we'll come back to Mitchell over at the Analyst Corner, where Mitchell has some great commentary for us and video. And then, hey, special day. It's Monday. We've got Channel Roundup with Mike Vizard. Mike's guest today is Valtech CEO Doug Murray, and he's going to explain how data in the cloud will be secured via a SaaS platform that Cisco Investments, the investment on Cisco, Northgate Capital, and the syndication group have invested over $12.5 million off the bat in. So that should be interesting. And then I'll be back to close things up. It's just another Monday here on TechStrong TV, but it's the beginning of your work week and the month. We're going to take a quick commercial. I'll be right back with our first guest.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Joel Fulton is a savvy security veteran. Splunk, bunch of big enterprise household names. He left there about a year ago now and started a company called Lucidum. He is the CEO, co-founder, and they are all about asset discovery, not just devices, but people, everything on the network. And because you got to know what you have in order to protect it. Joel will tell you more about it. He does a better job than I do. So let's now go to my interview with Joel Fulton of Lucidum.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on another episode of TechStrong TV. My guest for this segment is Joel Fulton. Joel is the CEO founder of a company called Lucidum. If I messed up, Joel, you're going to correct me. And fairly new company. We haven't covered them before. So, Joel, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. A pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. So, Joel, we haven't covered the company before. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, ask you to start with that. Give us a little company background, and maybe you are the CEO founder, a little bit of your own background.
You bet. Glad to. So I'll start with the least important, personal background. So I've been responsible for security and risk at companies like Splunk. Most recently, I was their chief information security officer. But before that, Google, Symantec, Starbucks, Boeing, all little startups. And at every one of these environments, when you take a new role leading security, you ask, as part of your onboarding, 3 questions. You always ask these 3 questions. Can you tell me what your assets are? Can you give me a data flow map? And can I have an org chart? Because we talk about people, process, technology. That's the definition of people, process, technology. And you always get the same answer back. The answer is, well, the org chart, well, that's in Workday or Bamboo or SAP, and it's mostly correct. The data flow, boy, that'd be cool. Yeah, we had somebody working on that, and I'm not sure where they went. But that asset thing, you should get on that. That should be in your 90 days. So you're tasked with controlling, enabling, securing a company, and you don't have the material with which to begin. Having experienced this, having talked with others who themselves experienced this, that was the genesis for the idea for Lucidum, which means to see things in the dark. That is, what is storing, transmitting, processing data on my network? That's what we do.
Excellent. If you don't mind, because I've been through this a bunch of times, could you spell the company name for it? It's going to be on the bottom of the screen people see anyway. But some people don't watch the screen. They play this in the background and they listen.
Wonderful.
So can you spell the company name?
I will. Lucidum. And it's
Lucidum.
Latin, and it means light reflecting, like lucid, but it's a material that reflects light. That's where the name comes from.
Excellent. Very cool stuff. At some point, well, if it was non-COVID times and we could have some beers, you'll explain to me how you guys came up with that name.
Sure
but
will.
we'll save it for another interview. How's that, Joel?
I love the idea.
All right. So, co-founder, which leads me to believe there are other co-founders. Who else is involved there?
So my friend of more than 8 years and co-founder, his name is Charles Feng. And Charles is my complement. I describe our relationship to people as being functionally codependent. So my experience, 25 years in security and technology, his 30 years in math, machine learning, and system engineering. Codependent, I always have problems. He solves them. So that is the genesis for our friendship and also the product that we have now, as of this week, Monday the 25th, released a community version of.
Excellent. I want to jump into that, but I want to give us a little lead up to that. When did you guys form the company?
We opened on January, the first business day in January of 2020. We're a little over a year old.
Great. And the community version, well, I'm trying to, how do we lay this out so it makes sense to people? We spoke a little bit about what the problem you're looking, you guys are looking to solve here with Lucidum, but let's talk about the solution, and then we could drill down into what the community version is versus, let's say, the commercial version or whatever.
Wonderful. So the problem that I expressed, give me that asset data flow org chart. That's a problem I faced as an executive. But it is a problem that stops my success second and third consequences later. The people who deal with this problem on a day-to-day basis are the security engineers, the SOC analysts, the incident responders. They're the ones who feel the pain the most. So as we early began talking with customers, my peers, we learned that while they wanted the end result, it was the engineers on the team that loved the product, that loved to execute with it. That's what led us to release a community edition.
Got it. This idea of understanding what is on your network, who's on your network, where on your network, is one, that we've been grappling with for, look, I'm in this business also 25, 30 years, primarily security, right? I remember back to Big Fix, if you remember. I'm sure you do, yes. Joe. You're not 20 years old. Big Fix, and eventually got bought by and rolled into like IBM Tivoli and stuff.
That's right.
But they, one of the problems they were looking to solve was to really kind of give you an accurate map or what you got.
That's right.
Then they went very heavy into managing what you got.
Yes,
but
that's right.
The initial part was what you got. And of course, the people behind Big Fix, after I guess their contracts, their non-competes are over, started Tanium.
That's right.
Right. And
that's it.
Similar kind of thing. Part of their mission, I guess, is what you got, and then manage what you got.
That's right.
Another, my friend Jeremiah Grossman, who is the founder of White Hat Security.
That's right.
I don't know, you probably know Jeremiah too, Joe.
Now NTT.
Right. So Jeremiah and Rob Hansen did something called Bit Discovery, where they had a unique take on this, right? They would give you the internet view of what you got.
That's right.
Right? They were trying to do it from outside your network, right? In the old day, we used to call it the hacker's eye view.
Yeah, attack surface visibility, that sort of, right? Shodan, census, those kinds of, yeah.
So this is a problem. This is a known problem, right? This isn't a new problem. This is a known problem. And quite frankly, we've never solved it.
Isn't that interesting? It's the most basic of problems out there. What am I supposed to be managing? Because if you've been in security long enough to probably have used the aphorism, don't spend $10,000 on a safe to protect a $10 bill. And we all kind of, like, it's rational, of course, why would you? But the problem is, I can't see the bill. I have no idea how much that bill is worth.
Exactly.
And that's this old problem. I can't see what I'm managing. It reminds me of the early stages of antivirus. Can I see what's running on my computer? Well, I can do a top. I can look through my processes and see what's running. Well, can people hide things? How would we know they're hiding them? So what we're going to do as Symantec, as Norton, we're going to come out with a list of things that we're going to look for. And that's how we really started early to look at solving asset visibility. Show me what you know, and I'm going to aggregate this and deduplicate, and I'll present you one screen that shows all the things that you know together. There was a big switch in the mid-2000s with machine learning based antivirus. It's going to be responsive. There's no downloads, no whitelist. No, it's going to look and use heuristics to say, that seems odd to me. It's probably a problem. That is the change that we have introduced into asset visibility that we think is actually going to fix the problem. We're not counting on aggregating sources of data that you know are invalid to try to create a valid, like garbage in, garbage out. How do we ever forget that? But what we do is using machine learning that's built for purpose, we triangulate to find out, hey, who else is talking in this environment? And what are they doing? And who's using them? And how much does it matter to you? That's what we bring together and present to the customer.
Excellent. Reminds me back in the day, we used to call it passive vulnerability scanning. Ron Guler at Tenable and them were doing it, if you remember.
Yes.
And then Marty Roche at SourceFire had something else similar to that. Remember? Basically, just sniffing your own network.
Yes, exactly. Because that's the common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not on my network, including my cloud, if it's not in my network and not on my cloud, well, then it's not one of my assets. But the moment it touches that environment, it surprises people who have not lived with tech or security. When I use this analogy, if you closed your eyes, you could tell me how many doors there are in and out of your house. If I asked you how many windows there were leading to the outside, you might be wrong 3%. You might miss a couple of windows. You ask a CISO or a head of cloud or the head of a DevOps shop, how many ways are there in and out of your environment? And they'll laugh. They know that's a rhetorical question. There's just no way. But to those not in tech, that's frightening. How on earth could you not know? Well, we know how you don't know. That's what we're after the rectification of.
Absolutely. And of course, the whole advent of cloud and off-prem, SaaS and everything else has just, exponentially made this harder.
Yeah. And work from home.
And work from home, that's
right.
10,000 points of light or more.
And all those lights are an oncoming train.
Exactly. Or could be, right? And that, is it a $10 item or a $10,000 item? When it's just a point of light, you don't know whether it's a train or a point of light. And all of those point of lights can turn into trains, right? Depending what happens. So it's that's what makes security fun. That's why we keep doing it all these years, right? Because it's kind of like the Gordian knot of technology,
I love that. That's exactly right.
Yep. So let's talk about the community edition. What's in it? How do people get it? What can we do with it?
Love it.
So where's the path up?
So the community label tends to be a euphemism for free. And our community label is not just a euphemism for free, but we also rolled out concomitant with it a forum, so that when you enroll and get the community edition license, you can then join and share with, I've built these dashboards or I've built new API connectors, and we're open sourcing our connector as well. So that's the nut of the community edition. We do need to exist as a business. And so the community edition is presently limited in its ingestion. We find everything in AWS in this community license. Next, we'll have a release of just Azure, next of GCP. So for free, you'd be able to select inventory this cloud, or that cloud. What's the difference between the community edition and the enterprise edition? A license change. With the license upgrade, now we ingest everything. Let me be specific about everything. It's got 3 categories. We ingest data about assets that exist, not just cloud, but all the endpoint. Tanium, Qualys, Tenable, all of them. We ingest data about users, both organizational and authorization. That lets us display for you, hey, Alan was using a personal login to access a corporate. We can differentiate that. And in the final, we ingest information about the data that are being stored, transmitted, or processed, and we do a post-analysis labeling. So we begin to tell you, Alan is using confidential data, Joel's using highly confidential data. So that allows you to decide, is this a $10,000 bill or a $10 bill that I need to protect?
That sounds great. So with the Splunk connection, one of the great things about Splunk was it was able to collect data everywhere. And anywhere. Right. And of course, the issue became quickly is, my God, how can I store and use all this, analyze all this data? I had more data than I know what I can do with. Is this, in a similar vein, is this like a SaaS type hosted thing, or is it hosted on-prem, by individual customers, or what's the story?
So we don't charge based on ingestion, and that's
good.
Different than other models. We charge based on the outcome. You want to find your assets, you want to find all your users. That's the charging basis. Mm-hmm. Second, we do not offer this as a hosted solution. And the reason that we purposefully chose to only deploy at our customer's site, and that might mean in your cloud, in your Azure, GCP, AWS, on a virtual machine, in your data center on bare metal, that's where we deploy, is because when I turn this around and I ask the question, if I were a prospect buyer, would I give my crown jewels to anybody? No, not without kicking and screaming. So in order to make it appropriate for vicariously me to purchase this, we built it so that we could install within you without depending upon us for security.
Excellent. Good stuff. Just so people have a frame of reference, if they wanted to upgrade from the community version to the, call it commercial version or whatever, you gave us a reference point of what you're charging on, not based upon how much data they're storing or whatever. And of course, if they're storing it locally on their own network, makes sense.
None of my
right?
business. Yeah.
It's right. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, like some mid enterprise kind of thing. What do you think something like this would cost in neighborhood?
So there's two factors that exist, and we price based on the number of employees at a firm.
Oh, okay.
There's tiered pricing. So you are 500 employees and you've got 30,000 assets across your endpoints, your cloud, your CI/CD pipeline, the churn variability. That runs around 60,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
You're higher, 55,000 employees, 350,000 assets. You're looking at a steeper cost owing to the deployment required and the support necessary.
Got it.
Ingestion, build the integration. And that's the other piece that is important to us. We're after a blue collar software company. When you've got a leak in your sink, your plumber doesn't open with a PowerPoint. And you don't call the plumber unless you have a leak in your sink. So we want to do only one thing. And you talked earlier about BigFix and Tivoli and some of the others where it's not just see it, but it's manage it as well.
Yeah.
We think that split focus makes a beggar of both. All we do is find all the assets. And then not only could you use us as the platform to do the queries and trigger action and other tools, et cetera, which you can in the community edition, but we'll also integrate and feed your ServiceNow, your Splunk, your Logarithm, your Sumo, your Exabeam, whatever your tool is. We don't need to be in your face all the time. You don't want another screen probably.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. This is great stuff. Guys, have you guys, and forgive my ignorance, but have you announced a round have you announced funding for the company yet, or is this still bootstrapped? What are you guys doing?
So we raised money in December of 2019.
Okay. Right before the world turned upside down.
We did. And we came out of stealth Halloween, just before Halloween. And we waited to come out and make any announcement because everybody announces when they raise money. But the salient thing to announce, we thought, was having other people say, you've solved our problem. And there's some there. So we waited for 10 months to make sure that we had customers that were using it, were excited about it, and they would speak for us. And then as a footnote, we raised some money.
Excellent. Good stuff. Joe, we're about out of time, but pleasure talking to you. Wish you tons of luck with Lucidum.
And I'm going to hold you accountable for that beer in Boca Raton, and I'll tell you the story about the name.
You know what? As soon as you can travel, come on down, man.
I love
it. It'll be my pleasure. I can't wait don't even get me started. You're talking to someone who used to spend at least a week a month, if not more, on the road at conferences, around the world. And I never thought I'd miss being in an airport, but
I'm with you. I will see you there. I'm looking forward to it.
You and me both, man. You know what? But don't wait till come in person. Come back on and keep us posted with this. It's a good story.
Thank you.
All right. Joel Fulton, CEO, co-founder at Lucidum. Go check out their community edition. Right now it's for AWS.
That's right.
Only, but GCP, Azure will be forthcoming. And we'll have Joel back on and tell us more. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSec Ops, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
You know, Smartbear is one of those companies, you may not know who Smartbear is, but you know a lot of their products and you're probably using them. They have best-in-class products in more than one category. They've recently brought on industry veteran Greg Nicastro, an old friend of mine, as EVP GM Product Technology, and to kind of bring this strategy all together and make Smartbear a household name. I'm joined by Greg and Smartbear CEO Frank Rowe, and we had a great discussion on state of the industry, state of Smartbear, where they see it going, where they're heading. It's a good conversation. Listen in on it. This is Frank Rowe and Greg Nicastro from Smartbear.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another segment for TechStrong TV. My guests for this segment on TechStrong are Frank Rowe and Greg Nicastro from Smartbear. Gentlemen, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to let each of you kind of introduce yourselves, your present position with Smartbear, and maybe just a little bit of your own backgrounds, and then we'll jump into stuff.
Frank, I'll defer to you.
All right, thanks, Greg. So Frank Rowe, I'm the CEO of Smartbear. I've been with Smartbear for almost 3 years now. My background has been in sales, consulting, go-to-market. Prior to being CEO and promoted to CEO, I was the Chief Revenue Officer, CRO, here at Smartbear. And it's been a wild ride. And Alan, thanks again for the time. We'd love to talk about Smartbear and how we doubled in 3 years and how we plan on doubling again.
Absolutely, Frank. It's a pleasure to have you on here. Greg, how about you?
So, Alan, good to see you again. EVP GM for Product and Technology at Smartbear. I'm 30 days into it. And it's been a lengthy career that I won't bore you to tears with, but I would just say that in this century, most recently with Cloud Health Technology in a similar capacity, and prior to that in Veracode, similar capacity, running product and development and engineering. And I guess if I said I've evolved into a passion around innovation, right? If I had to think about my career, and I'm a big security lover as well. So,
and just, you know, Greg and I know each other probably longer than either one of us want to admit, but because we're both 25. But anyway, Greg, it's a pleasure to have you in my circle again here and in the orbit. So welcome to DevOps and everything that Smartbear is on. Good luck there. So guys, we were talking off camera, Frank, and we mentioned that, Smartbear is a company we cover a long time here at MediaOps, whether it be through DevOps.com or Container Journal, or even a little bit in the security space with the Security Boulevard. Almost everyone in our audience knows one Smartbear product.
Yep.
They may not know that product is a Smartbear product, though.
That's right.
Right. And that's kind of both the blessing and the challenge. Right. As you mentioned, Frank, right. You doubled in 3 years. Double again.
Yep. Yeah, that's right, Alan. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we saw about 18 months ago or so. The fact that we have an amazing, loyal group of customers in a host of products, right? I mean, each one of these products could be its own company. And they have they have thousands and thousands of customers and are extremely loyal. We saw this 24 months ago. And our challenge was, how do we maintain that loyalty and expanded from a product, right? So Swagger or Test Complete, what used to be called SOAP is now how do we change that and actually expand that, I should say, from product loyalty to product loyalty, and that they're part of something bigger. And we started doing that kind of methodically over time, making things appear the same, having the same experience. And I would say the one thing that's grounded every one of our products and our product families that we now have is that it's easy to find, easy to try, easy to buy, and easy to deploy. That's a mantra that we have here in the company. It's something that every one of our products has, and it's really been the glue, if you will, in us going through what we actually have called internally One Smartbear. And again, its intention is to get that same loyalty at a product level to get it at the Smartbear level. And good news, we're seeing really great success. A lot of customers are now starting to say, "Hey, we use you for front end or back end or load performance. What else do you do?" And for us, that's phenomenal, and we see it in the results. And we see it in loyalty and in the retention numbers. If you use a second product or a third product of Smartbear, you stay with Smartbear. So we're really excited about it and really proud of what we've done in a very short period of time.
Absolutely. And look, this is a story that transcends technology and applications, right? Whether you're talking about telecommunications or anything. If you've got a customer who's using more than one of your products, the odds of losing that customer and him tearing out multiple or they tearing out multiple products,
that's right,
decreases drastically, right? If they have more than one, they have two, and then if they have three or more, it's there.
And Alan, the key there, and this is why Greg's here and has joined us, and obviously with Greg, please share too. But the key is they're innovative products. And so we have, a whole bunch of innovative products. And so when people, yes, they would prefer to go from one vendor as long as those products are innovative. And what we're seeing is we're actually replacing a lot of monolithic companies that have just been around in the space for 10, 15, 20 years, and they've stopped innovating. And so we believe we're the best of both worlds. We have innovative products, and we're a family of products so that you can expect things like integration, interoperability. We were at a perfect inflection point to bring on someone of the caliber of that Greg brings, his track record, his experience, his attitude. And that's where we're really, really excited about having Greg join us. Like you said, 30 days ago. I'm sure, Greg, sometimes it might feel like 30 years ago, but that's the backbone for why Greg has joined us and why we looked and we're really excited about having Greg come on board.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Alan, one of the things that in looking at this from the outside, we know that it's like software ate the world a long time ago. We can say it's eating the world. And you think about what that really means, right? And then I like to think about it as sort of API-driven development is eating software, okay? And on top of that, all the software has to work. So if you roll that together and you look at the product offering, and this is kind of how I looked at it as an outsider before I decided to come in and take the job. You roll all those things together, and Smartbear is right smack dab in the middle of that, right? So we have offerings, to your point earlier, we have offerings both open source and commercial that affect, sort of that whole spectrum. And to me, that means there's a tremendous opportunity for growth, right? And the companies, I think Frank alluded to that already, the company's seen that to date. One of the interesting things I've found since coming on board, though, inside, is that with all these acquisitions, the company has managed to maintain sort of these pockets of innovation with these founder types that are still with the company, right? And it's a blessing from my standpoint to inherit some of that, running sort of the product and engineering and support side, because there's a lot we can do with that. Even a company that's the scale, I don't know how much I could say about how big the company is, but call it hundreds of people, right, in a development and product and support organization, to be able to harness creativity and innovation at the same time as you're scaling. That's part of the fun. To me, that's part of the fun. I mean, so the question being like, what gets you off the semi-beach? Because I was doing board work and consulting work. Part of it is this kind of a, an opportunity and a challenge. And on just a personal note, and this is not speaking for Frank, this is purely speaking for myself. I look at this one as an opportunity to have another IPO. I was lucky earlier in my career. I've been acquired multiple times, but earlier in my career, I had a chance to help take a company public. And the rush that we all got as a team for doing that, it was, I haven't had a chance to do it again in over 20 years. I'd love to see that movie with this, with Smartbear. And I think Smartbear has the kind of market and growth potential, to be able to pull something like that off. Frank, I probably said more than I should on that front, Frank. That's personal. That's me speaking for myself.
No, I think what you're saying though, Greg, is we have all the characteristics of companies that have been very, very successful in that type of a market. Will that happen? Who knows, right? That'll be more the situation in the economy and the market than it'll be anything else. But we deliver the results, right? You don't double in 3 years. And that's not just top line, that's earnings, that's ARR, right? I mean, those are all the key metrics we've doubled. And so we're really excited about it. And again, like I said, we are positioned to continue to do that.
Excellent. And congratulations, Greg. Congratulations to you, Greg, for seeing the opportunity, and congratulations to Frank and the rest of the Smartbear team for bringing someone of Greg's caliber on board. Just to give the audience a flavor, how many different products, services is Smartbear offering these days? Do either one of you have a number that you can share?
Yeah, we do. I think what I'd like to say is we actually have 4 product families, 4 product groupings, right? API lifecycle, test management, functional test, and code review and monitoring. So those are the 4 areas that we play in. Each one of them have, roughly 2 to 4 products that sit in there that are interoperable and that have integrations that you'd expect. That's something that we've done just recently in the last 12 months. We've really focused around our product group, what we call product groupings. Some might consider them product families, right? So we have the Ready API, the whole Ready API suite of products, Swagger and Swagger Hub. They sit in our API lifecycle, right? And so that's just a great example of us being focused and making sure we can deliver. Because our plan will be to grow both organically, like we have been doing, and through acquisitions. We have a 2-pronged growth approach, and so sure, do we have 14 products? Yes, we do, but we look at it as through the lens of we have 4 product groupings, and what are we doing to dominate each one of those product groupings?
Excellent. Look, the 3 of us are not babes in Toyland here. We've all been in the business a while, right? Yep. And there's always a pendulum swinging between, do I go best in class or one throat to choke? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
yep.
And it goes back and forth over time.
Sure.
Large organizations will go one way or the other. To me, Smartbear is a company that's positioned for both, right? If you want to go best in class, look, there are best in class offerings in all 4 of these areas that you laid out, Frank. Greg, I'm going to throw it to you, though, do you envision one day having, let's call it a Smartbear suite, where all these products have they may have a common look and feel now, but can you have a common dashboard or a common interface or whatever you want to call it, where you manage these from?
Yeah, I could envision us going. I could definitely envision us going that route. But I take a step. So yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, there's a couple of things though. The way that the products are purchased, right? You think about, again, you mentioned we've been around it for a while. So this whole, open source, buying model, right? And you get to this question of best of breed or, suite. Well, a lot of the purchase decisions are being made by technical professionals, right? And more that way. And so that has an effect on this whole concept, right? Do I see a future where we could marry things together in a way that makes sense, that's not so deep that it goes beyond what our customers really need or want? Okay. I wouldn't want it to interfere with if you will, the magic of product-led growth, which we're seeing more and more in the last few years, right? So, people are essentially using the product, convincing themselves that they want to buy it, and it's a very efficient motion, and it plays to, I think, a power center, right? Which is developers have more and more, developers and software engineers and test and, professional testing technologists. I mean, they have more and more influence over what's being purchased, right? So I think we could go that route, but we also have to be smart about nurturing sort of the folks that are actually making the buying decisions along the way.
Yeah, no, I call this the democratization of IT, right? Where, look, coming up, it was always, and Frank, you have a revenue, sales background. It was always about, hey, let's go meet that C-level. Let's get the CIO or the VP, right? And in today's world, especially with open source, that's not the way in.
No.
Right? We want to come in almost from the bottom up or mid out, right?
Yeah, we focus on team, developer first, but then we focus on the teams and the groups and the divisions. And then quite honestly, they do the selling for us. Not to make it sound like the sales is easy.
Yeah, no, they become your champions.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. Yeah, 100%. And for us, that was a very conscious decision that we took, I'd say about 18 months ago as well, which is we're going to focus on the role of the developer. We're going to go horizontally, and we're going to focus on what those jobs are that developer is doing. And there's, you can read the studies, but, developers and team lead developers, their authority to buy software has gone fivefold just in the last couple of years. And we see it every day.
Absolutely. And fundamentally, what does that mean for an organization? Well, instead of going out and hiring, enterprise sales guys with these long sales cycles and whining and dining, you hire DevRel people, right? Developer relations who work the community,
right?
Who work, that, because that developer community, that, democratization kind of model, that's what it calls for.
Absolutely.
It's about, hey, I'm going to get this software in your hands. It's not going to cost you anything, maybe at first even, right? You don't have to buy the six-figure deal right now.
That's right.
So I'm going to get it in your hands. I'm going to deliver delight. And if you like it, tell your boss and let him tell his boss.
Exactly.
And then maybe we wind up getting an enterprise-wide sale out of it. But it's Frank, as a sales professional, it's a little scary because it's a very different model.
Right. Sure.
I'm going to go hire some really experienced sales guy who's going to, go through that kind of Zig Ziglar selling model, right? But that's not where we are anymore. It's not where we are.
That's right. Yep, I agree 100%. And in fact, Greg is a witness to this, not only on that front, but we've decided that we're going to pour more and more investment into the open source community. And so we actually have budget and headcount, or budget to hire headcount in 21 that their primary focus is on the open source. Again, why? Because we want to add that in. We truly believe in communities and building communities, and whether that's open source or our commercial pro products, we want to contribute to both.
I get it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this works out. Greg, not to put too much pressure on you, but I got high hopes for you over there, man. I'd like to see this IPO. Put me on the friends and family list.
I hear you. No, well, I tell you, I want to bring one of the things that I'd love to bring to this is sort of the, if you will, the DevSec Ops Lens. So just look across this ideate to operate sort of landscape, and that sort of holistic view is going to inform, as Frank mentioned, acquisitions and organic development for the business. So to me, that's part of the fun. And as I think we've discussed in the past, part of what I've done at prior companies is we drink our own champagne, right? Yeah. So using So using some of those same kinds of tools and practices in the, in the whatever it is, 10 plus development centers that we have globally, and we'll add more, I'm sure, is going to be part of it, right? Is that let's look at the strategy across DevSec Ops, with a DevSec Ops mindset, and then let's apply that so that we can be referenceable, on our own account. So that's part of what I'm thinking about moving forward.
Agreed. Well, look, you know what? DevSec Ops is a real thing, right? And it has become mainstream into that developer community. So that mindset, those, thinking about security's everyone's responsibility kind of thing is happening. I mean, we're doing, we spoke about RSA off camera. We'll be doing DevSec Ops Day at RSA. Well, it's virtual this year. It's the week of May 17th, that Wednesday, all day we'll be doing, with RSA, we partner with them, their DevSec Ops thing. We'll talk about it, Greg. Maybe we could do something on that. But anyway, Hey, man, good to have you back, Greg. Frank, a pleasure having you on here on TechStrong TV. Don't be strangers, guys. Stay in touch with us here. Keep us posted. And, when and if we do stuff in person in Coconut Creek or whatever, I'd love to have you come visit. We could do something in person here at our Boca studio. So all
That'd
good.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Thank you for the time.
All right. Hey, best of luck. Stay safe and well. Greg DeCastro, new EVP GM at Smartbear, along with Frank Rowe, CEO. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be right back.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Next up, we're starting with a fresh episode of The Haunted Hacker. This is part 1 of episode 2. Mike Jones, one of the co-founder folks over at the original Anonymous Hacker group, or Hacktivist group, is of course the host of The Haunted Hacker. And Mike always has some great guests on here. This is part 1. It'll be a 3-part series playing this week of episode 2. Here now is part 1, Haunted Hacker, Mike Jones.
And Tremi, feel free to jump in. Why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So my name is Tremi Anderson. I'm head of marketing for Vana High Security. So full disclosure, I'm in tech and I love it, but I have so much learning to catch up with you guys who are much more technical. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast and giving me that avenue to kind of learn and just kind of pick everyone's brain. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out there in case you guys think I'm a hacker. I am not.
Awesome. Well, welcome. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and open it up to Steve. Let me see. Let's go ahead and unmute Steve and take his video for him. So we can start our conversation. They found another piece of malware attached to SolarWinds. It's like the 4th one so far that they've identified, which is really interesting. It just seems like they keep finding more and more pieces of SolarWinds and the attack behind it. I don't think we're anywhere near the end of it for sure. I think we have a lot more to discover. But it should be interesting how everything plays out. But yeah, So we're going to also look at an encoder for MSF Venom that helps encode payloads to try to get past different AVs and stuff like that. Shikado Ganai, it's been out there for a while, but even back in 2019, it was detected being used by APT-20 to hide payloads. It all depends on the delivery and how many iterations, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Still waiting on Steve. I don't know if he's having problems there. Anyway.
Well, so tell me a little bit more about Shikata Ganai, because it's something that I recently learned about. It's not something that's being used frequently now, right? Because a lot of antivirus will pick it up, right? It'll be detected. So, so how's that being used today, I guess?
So the way that I've been using Shikata Ganai, as far as in the lab, I'll take an exe or some other code and inject it, and also encode it with Shikata Ganai, and then I do a lot of USB attacks, right? Like remote attacks where you have like something hosted on a web server or like AWS. And that's like going to be your PowerShell script, right? So there's ways to get around those controls, especially like if you're using PowerShell, and you can remotely execute something like that's encoded with Shikata Ganai. But there's all kinds of ways that you can do with Shikata. Really what you're doing with Shikata is just putting null bytes into the payload, which makes it really difficult to like pick up. Now there are like some payloads with Shikata with different iterations that you can absolutely get past AV without even having to worry about it. But that takes a little bit more finesse and a little bit more work to get it through. But for beginners, I mean, it's a good way to like experiment with encoding and experiment with MS Venom, creating your own malware, your own malicious payloads. So what I try to do on the podcast really is start at like a beginner level and kind of introduce people to the tools, give like a brief overview of, what could be going on, and then give them a little bit of heads up. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And if you create your own lab environment, it can be really good. Let's see. All right. For some reason, Steve is still having problems with his audio.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, absolutely. But I can't see you, Steve.
It says can't start video because host has stopped it. Unable to start video.
I will make Frenchie a host and he can mess with that, and we'll go ahead and start. So Steve, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad to have you here. I think we actually have Ashley Pierre and Colin Hardy on the podcast as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Our alumni. So tell us about yourself, Steve.
Yeah, sure. So, as you say, my name is Steve Watts. I'm currently the head of security operations at Aldermore Bank here in the UK. I've been in IT for around 20 years, and around 10 of that has been in cybersecurity, doing a number of different jobs, primarily in critical national infrastructure, also in the financial sector, the main kind of industries that I've worked through. Worked from early on help desks, worked all the way through, I guess, the normal route, as you'd probably say, coming through the technical support, help desk manager, going into kind of Windows and Intel infrastructure management, and then senior management in there, and then kind of got my first role in security, and went from there, really. So I'll probably dig into some of that today and give it a bit of the background as to what that looked like if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one question I wanted to ask you. So I was listening to, there you are. Awesome. So I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts, right? With Colin Hardy and Ashley Pierre. And you had a very unique start when it came to security. So maybe like briefly touch on that, and then we can get into the more nuts and bolts.
Yeah, so I guess going way back as to how I first started, I think I got my hands on a computer really first time was in junior school. When I was really young, they had like Acorn computers, the terminal type computers. You could do like move the mouse or the cursor forward, back. So I was just really interested in that from there. Really, got on the computer as much as I could and did a little bit of basic programming, and it just kind of stuck with me really. So that was first introduction to it. And that just stayed at school. I didn't have a computer at home or anything like that. I had a console. But one night I sat down and started watching a film called War Games that probably everyone on here is familiar with. If you're not, definitely go and check that out. It's an awesome film. But yeah, War Games basically got me into the whole hacking scene, into security, and set me up to be where I am now, really. So yeah, without going into all of the plot for it, there's a guy that's doing dial-up, doing a bit of war dialing in bulletin board systems. He basically breaks into NASA and loads of kind of fun and games after that. I won't spoil the plot, but I was just I was overwhelmed by the fact that you could get on a computer, connect to one at the other side of the world, and really affect and potentially cause something like that. So that film just set me on that trajectory. I wanted to learn as much about it as I could, really. So managed to get my hands on it on a laptop. My parents bought me a laptop with a modem. Back in the day, there was no kind of internet like we have now, no Wi-Fi, just good old modems. So screeching away, dialing up onto various bulletin boards, buying computer magazines and looking for bulletin boards in the back of those telephone numbers that could dial up. Came across some tools online to be able to do war dialing and see what kind of, that was the Matthew Broderick, the War Games kind of influence there. And it was what can I see, what can I find? Found all of these hacking and underground type bulletin boards, and I was just like, wow, like where do I start? There's just so much stuff to get my teeth into. There was how to access systems, how to program, all sorts of things. And I just really didn't know where to start. I just jumped in and was having as many conversations with people on bulletin boards, getting to know people, getting into the community, and just swapping tips and ideas and tricks, learning about computers and just looking at the security side of things, really. And then I think back in the bulletin board days, it was pretty difficult not to come across things like phone phreaking. I was started reading things like 2600, Cult of the Dead Cow, Legions, all those types of kind of publications, if you like, and I was just bowled over by how interesting it was and what you could do to manipulate these systems and use them. So, just learning as much as I could, really. Again, VAX and VMS was quite big back in the day. So there was loads of tools online for VAX, VMS, loads of default passwords and things. So just really absorbing as much of that as I could, I guess, was really where I started. And that was, I think it was maybe just before I'd started school. That was high school. That was so. That's how I got into the scene, I guess, really.
That's really interesting. You mentioned BBSs and war dialing. So when I first became a pen tester, a lot of the work we did war dialing on different devices and different networks. It brings back memories of the old days. So did you start like your legitimate security career as blue team or red team?
So it's a bit of a strange one. So the bit they've not covered off really was that when I moved from bulletin boards, so the internet became a little bit more mainstream and I got access to the internet. My whole, again, the world was just opened up to all the different forums that were online on the internet. So started doing various things on there, playing around, getting interested in malware, downloading malware samples and testing things, breaking my machine. The amount of times I had to kind of re-image my machine from doing things wrong was unreal. But just really getting my hands on as much things as I could. And I had a couple of friends that were also interested in security and in IT. We had the same classes at school, IT classes. So we'd try and, hack each other or get each other's passwords, give each other permission, obviously, to do that. We'd send each other, NetBus was quite big back in the day, NetBus Trojan. So, and it was packaged up as a whack-a-mole game. So we were sending it to our friend and saying, try out this game, see if you get a high score on it, and drop us an email back and tell us what score you got. Because back in the day then, when Hotmail was actually HTML, Hotmail, that's where the name comes from if you didn't know, but it actually came back with your source IP address, your home IP address on the email. So you could quite easily take that IP address, put that into NetBus and connect to that person that had run the whack-a-mole game. So we had some good fun with a couple of our friends, kind of opening their CD drawer and sending them to websites, all that sort of fun stuff. But just really, really curious. No maliciousness to it. But I guess the interesting thing for me was just seeing what was out there. So I started, scanning and seeing all of these internet IP addresses that were open and that were infected with all these different things. So doing a lot of scanning. And anyway, cut a long story short, one day I came home from school and my dad kind of sat me down and he said, I think we need to have a chat. And I was like, okay, this doesn't sound too good. What's this about? And my ISP had basically sent him a letter saying that we've seen this activity, coming from your machine, please cease and desist, basically. Before we take it any further. And my dad sat me down. He's really calm. I take after my dad quite a bit in terms of he doesn't like he always likes challenges and things like that. So he really knew that I wanted to carry on doing this. But he said to me, look, you're obviously good at this, but you can't be doing this. You can't get in trouble. I was like, well, I don't want to stop doing it because I absolutely love it. So I need to find another way to kind of do this. So that's kind of what led me down to the blue team side of things, if you like. Got me really interested in what you could do to stop this type of activity from happening, how you stop yourself from getting infected, and kind of change my whole approach to what I was thinking about security and went more on the defensive side. But to answer your question, my first role was in security architect, so building secure systems, so very much kind of from the protective side. It wasn't until a little bit further into my career that the company I was working for, they were outsourcing the pen testing, and I wanted to really be able to help with, cut some of the cost of pen testing, but also develop myself as well. So I went and got qualified as an ethical hacker, and kind of used my red team skills in the business then, really. But the majority of my career has been blue. Yeah, it's been on the protection, putting in secure systems, and then on the response side, kind of responding to any incidents, that sort of thing.
So I have a question. I see lots of organizations really focusing on blue team, right? Because our company does penetration testing, and it's a challenge for me, to educate why an organization needs a pen test, because a lot of times they'll just invest a lot of money on the blue side. So I'm curious to understand more about the dynamic, and you seem very well-rounded, where you're an ethical hacker and you're on the defensive side. So what's the dynamic like between the two sides? Do you guys work well together? I know there's purple teaming, but how does that all kind of come together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think in terms of companies throwing a lot of resource and money and energy at blue, I think there's, and many people have said this, and I know you've had Greg Vandergast on as well, Mike, and a big kind of person calling out the fact that instead of doing all of the reaction, really we need to be kind of shifting left, if you like, down the kill chain and doing protect these systems in the first place, so that there's not as much things for blue teams to actually have to respond to. So I think you will definitely always need blue teams and your security operations. They will always be there, and humans as well. And we'll probably get onto that. We talked a little bit about that on last night on chat about automation. But blue team. But definitely try and fix your problems downstream. Stop those need for a reaction. But there always will be one. You need to assume breach. So you need your blue team, but then you also need your red teams to come in and test those things and try and, as best they can, put that threat actor hat on and try and test and not just pen testing is one thing, and everyone will be doing pen testing, but it's also doing your pen testing whilst working with your blue team. So, not just we're going to go and test this web server over here, and then a report comes over and people read it. You also want to be including your blue team to see how they're reacting to that, make sure they've got the right log set up, so that if that attack does occur, that in a test scenario that you're going to get the right signals through, that you're going to get all the information through, so that if that does occur for real, that you're prepped and you're set up as a blue team. And the combination, as you said, Trami, that the purple team in the middle is super important. That dynamic needs to be that they just both work to make each other better. A red teamer is going to make it more difficult for a blue teamer, and then they're going to share those TTPs, and the blue team is going to get better. The blue team is going to use all of their skills to be able to stop that red team, and therefore the red team are going to have more of a challenge, and they're going to be pushed and kind of stretched to do certain things. So it's I won't say it's a love-hate, because everyone loves each other, push and pull. It's definitely feeding off each other, and just for me, it's just sharing that knowledge, and it's not different sides of the fence. It's just different approaches to the same problem for me.
It's really interesting too, because we talk about red team and blue team quite a bit, but I come from the mindset that when it comes to building an organization, I want my people to know both sides. I want them to be able to compromise the system so that they can really understand what's going on the defensive side, if that's their job, being defense. But the mindsets are different too. We talked about that a little bit last night, as far as what makes the blue team, and what comprises the red team psychology. But yeah, that's it's a really good point. It's a good conversation to have. Maybe we can get into that in a little bit. So with building your teams, what do you look for in a candidate? Let's say you have somebody trying to get into the industry, and you want to give them an opportunity. What are some of the key points that you look for that makes somebody more attractive, as far as a red team or blue team or any team, really? What kind of traits do you look for individually in a person?
So it's really good timing, actually, because I've just signed up to a mentor site. I've just taken on some mentorees. I've got a couple now that I feel quite grateful to be able to start giving back to the industry. And you get asked those questions. How do I get into cybersecurity? What's somebody looking for? How do I get into cybersecurity when I don't have any experience? If I'm fresh out of school, people are saying, I'm seeing jobs that say 5 years worth of experience or these certifications. How do people expect us to get into the industry when we can't? We can't, because you've blocked us straight away. And these are really clever people, right? These are people that need to be in our industry. They're really passionate. So it is very difficult from that perspective. And as a mentor, I guess what I say to people is, well, the first questions, and I blogged on this recently, actually, on how to break into the industry. The questions I asked to people as a mentor, and also the similar questions when I interview, is what is it that makes you want to enter this industry? Why this industry over any other, really? Because for me, really, I'm looking for somebody that's passionate. You can get some people that aren't necessarily passionate and live and breathe this stuff, but they're really good at the job. So you wouldn't use that to rule it out, but certainly somebody being passionate and getting that sense that they really are interested in the role is a big thing for me, really. And just willingness to learn, I think. Understand, loving puzzles and challenges, because that's literally what whether you're defending, whether you're attacking, it's a puzzle, it's a challenge, and every single day is different. And that's what attracts most people, I think, to this role, is that you go into work in the morning, and the day that you have is not going to be the same as any other day you've had. There'll be something that's slightly different. There'll be a new news story that you need to look at, and all those sorts of things. It's an ever evolving thing. So yeah, passion, inquisitiveness, determination. And it's more really about the mindset. I don't necessarily look for somebody that's had 10, 20 years worth of experience in the industry. And some of the best people I've seen come into organizations have had very little, if any, IT or cyber security experience, but they've come from backgrounds where their mindset is, military, for example. You'll know yourself, Mike. Military people are very mission orientated, goal focused. They adapt, they overcome, they see a problem, over it, under it, round it, through it, whatever it is. It's that type of mentality that I think is really key.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I look for when I interview candidates as well is creativity, right? So it's not so much, knowing how to penetrate a system or knowing which exploits to use. For me, it's more of thought pattern and how creative they are. I don't expect everybody to know everything. And one thing that irritates me, especially in the industry, is we have a tendency to do these interviews with like a panel of people, right? So there's like 5 or 6 people in a room and it's one candidate and they're getting hammered from every side. And
I hate those panel interviews.
It's horrible because it's like, you have
you're nervous enough going into an interview, and then it's like you're being judged by like a panel of 5 people that are comfortable in their chairs,
Exactly. And everybody has a different level of expertise in different areas. So you walk into this gauntlet of people and each one has their own specialties, but they expect you to know all of the specialties, as a candidate. And I think that turns candidates away pretty quick. And I think another problem we have in the industry as far as like hiring and positions is we're not promoting from within. We have, jobs that open up in a mid-level. And so you see these jobs on the internet for people with 5 years experience. Why not move one of your other people up into that role and open a door for someone new in security? By not doing that, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice and actually limiting our capabilities as an industry. But that's my opinion. I think there's ways that we can, maneuver this whole idea of a shortage of talent. I don't think there's a shortage of talent. I think it's really just mismanagement of requisitions and people.
I think there's like that qualitative side and the quantitative side, right? So from like what you guys are saying, you're looking for someone with passion, creativity. Those are things that is hard for like a job recruiter to quantify, right? So if I'm an HR person, I'm just looking at numbers, stats. Everyone is just a number and stat. And I think that's the problem. But how do you guys even suggest addressing or fixing that, because you're trying to scale. There's all these jobs opening and a recruiter only knows so much. So they're just looking at numbers, certifications, like it's all just numbers. And you guys are saying the most valuable people are the ones that have all these kind of intangible things like the creativity, the passion, things that it's so hard to measure on a resume.
So the key thing missing out of that process is people. And I think Steve can, cover that people aspect of it because we talked a little bit about it last night, but I think he agrees and kind of like we speak from the same platform about how important people are. So why don't you give us your view of people in the industry?
Yeah, so it's a big subject, but I always say it starts with the people. The only reason we've got jobs in this industry is because people want to do things that, to break into systems. It's all people driven, that we're solving a people problem. People are a problem because they're the one that, trying to conduct the attacks, and it's people that are going to come back and respond to them. So it's a difficult question to answer in terms of the hiring because you are right, Tommy. How do you? It is intangible. It's not like, and this is why I think a lot of people get stuck up or hung up on. You need to be a CISP, you need to be a OSCP, you need X, Y, and Z because they automatically use that level to say, but that person must be good at doing that thing, so therefore they are going to be of use to me in the organisation. And I think there is some element of that. There is some element of truth to that. But again, if you just purely basing your hiring off those kind of that criteria, you're just going to miss so many amazing people out there. You just do a disservice to yourself and the industry. So I think it very much is, you have to work with your HR teams to try and get that across to them. And I've worked with some really good HR and recruitment teams before where I've said, look, we can't be driven by certifications and experience. I need somebody that can come along and is a problem solver, is creative, like you say, Mike. And you're not really going to know that until you get those people in front of you, and you start, picking them up, not apart really, but just asking them the questions. Seeing how they think, and give them a question, see how they respond to it, all that sort of thing. Just really get to know them, I think is the main thing. And because it is our industry, I say it over and over, it's about the people. It's not about the technology. It's all about the people, really. We need to look after our people, and we need to make sure we're getting the right people for the job, and not pigeonholing people as well.
And awesome. That brings up a good point too about learning people and getting to know people as people and not employees. Because the biggest problem that companies have with compromises and breaches is insider threat, right? So if you don't get to know who your people are and they don't have some sort of connection with you as a person, and you're not interested in their life outside of work, and you don't encourage them to, do the things that they have a passion for, you're potentially building that insider threat. And some of those companies, it's very dangerous to do that. So I always tell people in companies, if you don't know the guy sitting in front of, like, let's say an IDS or monitoring your network, if you don't know what his passions are, you don't know what he does outside of work or the things he enjoys doing other than work, then you're failing, because he's a person, not an employee, and that needs to be embraced. And I think that kind of culture will kill that whole insider threat issue unless it's like a targeted APT.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, for me, I've always said it's about people and relationships and networks and understanding the people, understand what makes them tick. Want to make sure that they're happy. The industry that we're in is a very stressful one. There's lots of stressful industries, but speaking specifically to this one, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of long hours, all those types of things. And we owe it to our staff to basically always be looking out for them. Checking in with them, understanding what works for them, understanding how they work, and really nurturing people. If you do that, the knock-on benefits are exactly as you say there, Mike. You get a happy workforce. That kind of takes that from the table. In that instance, and it just makes so much sense. You get more productivity out of the person. They're happier. You're going to retain those people as well. They're not going to go elsewhere and take all that knowledge, with them that you've built up over institutional knowledge over years and years. Going back to your point before, we do need to be recruiting internally, because those people have built up all of that knowledge. They've all of the network and relationships that they've built up over time that makes them a good person to have. We want to move them around and encourage, them staying within the company for all those reasons.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite interview question that you ask to understand, how someone thinks and if they're a good fit? What's your favorite interview question? And I want to hear one from Steve and one from Mike, because Mike, I know you're looking for creativity. Steve, you're looking for that passion, that drive, and how they tinker with something, right? So what's your favorite interview question?
Do you want me to go first, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the questions that I like asking is like kind of what's caught your eye in the industry this week? Just a nice open question, and at the moment, SolarWinds should probably be the top of most people's list, I imagine. So it for me, then it's really about saying, what do you know about that particular incident? How has it played out? And just really leave it down to them to explain back to me what they think, and then maybe throw a few questions in there as, if you were a blue teamer, what would you be thinking? Well, as soon as you hear that story break, what would be going through your mind? What would you be thinking? And just really seeing how that plays out, and then seeing how that fits with the type of person that I need within my team, really. So yeah, just let them come back to me, a pretty open question, and just let them run away with it, I guess. Yeah.
Nice.
So my favorite question that I've personally been asked was back in 2005. I flew up to Redmond, Washington, to Microsoft. And I was interviewing for a kind of like a program manager for code scrubbers, right? They would scrub the code and they'd, bring the code to me and say, hey, these are the issues. Do you want to release it or not? So I was expecting this really technical interview and just grueling interview because it was a day long. But the most interesting question I was asked was I was sitting in a really cluttered, small office at Microsoft campus, and a lady walks in. And she's sitting there and she goes, okay, our interview is going to be really short. I just have one question to ask. She said, there's an object in this room I'm thinking about. It's your job to figure out what that item is by asking the least amount of questions. And wow. I thought, okay, well, this is different. So yeah, I mean, those type of things, just trying to see where the people are, how they think, how they deduce, issues or problems. But one of the other things I like to ask potential candidates as well is, I want to know not the book level. I don't want to know, if you have a certification, it's great. I respect that. But I want to know, if I was to give you, system A, and, these are the vulnerabilities listed, what would you do? There's no right or wrong answer. Just tell me how you'd flow through that system, or what you would look at first, just to see, their thought patterns. And then, of course, I was asked, my token question at the end of the interview is, are you involved in any kind of art, whether it be music, painting, drawing? Because I find those people are usually some of the best analysts, because they look at things a different way. And they're not, they don't look black and white. They're kind of like, very creative, and they give you more of a holistic picture rather than, this is what's popping across the IDS or whatever. So yeah, so those are my favorite questions. Now I do know that, Steve, you have a background in martial arts as well, right?
I do, yeah. I've done martial arts since I was, again, probably around the same time, since I was really young. I got into it, probably when I was around 11 or 12, something like that. And I've done it on and off since then, really. But yeah, I've done Thai boxing and kickboxing for over 7 years. So that's my art, I guess. I'm not musical or anything like that, but certainly a martial art is.
And that seems to be, that seems to be kind of a theme across the security industry, right? So I know at least 2 or 3 people that are involved in martial arts or some type of MMA, right? Jeremiah Grossman, who started White Hat, is really into MMA. Like that's his thing. But I think that, again, is that calculated, strategic kind of view, and that combat sport kind of pushes things. And that kind of opens up another question too, as far as like red team, blue team. So I know with red team, we have sort of, the reaction once you get into a system, your body reacts a certain way. The biofeedback is pretty amazing. And I did a thing out in Sandia National Labs called Tularosa, Project Tularosa. So at the time I was staying with my parents, and I got a call, an email saying, hey, look, Sandia National Labs wants, you to come out and do this project. And I get the contract, and most of it was redacted. I couldn't figure out, what I was really doing. But I went out there and they hooked me up to all different kinds of sensors and stuff, and had us break into like this mock SCADA network. And the whole purpose was to kind of measure and look at the biometric feedback, blood pressure, eye movement from the camera, keystroke logging, heart rhythm. I had to wear a little bracelet that had a monitor on it. So it was really interesting. And I come to find out after that whole experiment, looking at the project summary, was that when red teamers or hackers get into a system, the chemicals that are released in the body's reaction is a lot like that of narcotics. So I think a lot of people, we talked about this last night. Like if someone told me I couldn't hack into a machine, that I was no longer allowed to have a lab and do exploits and exploit development, I think I would lose my mind, because it's addictive. So from a blue team point of view, there has to be a high level of stress that goes with that, because with an attacker, we just have to be right once, but with blue team, they have to be right all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of points there. I think for me, that the whole martial arts, cybersecurity, blue team, it's all about the challenge for me. You're pitting yourself against somebody else. They've got a certain set of skills. They want to do something. You want to do something else. And it's that whole kind of game of chess in the ring, in the same ways as, behind the keyboard. They want a different outcome from this particular engagement than you, basically, right? So it's who's going to come out on top, who's going to win, basically. And I think that's the driver for why I do Thai boxing. It's to test myself. It's to push myself. And likewise with security, it's always about that, that challenge and finding ways to do things and trying to outsmart or outwit other people. I guess that's ultimately what it comes down to. But in terms of the question around stress, you're absolutely, for the blue team, that's goes back to what I was saying before. It can be such a stressful role to be in, because it's always changing. There's always different things that you need to learn, and there's always different technologies every week. Containerization's coming along, and then you've got all of these different various different technologies, and you've got to it sometimes can be difficult to understand all of those technologies and the security implications that they have, right? Because you've got teams that are specialists in all of those things. You've got cloud specialists, you've got DevOps specialists, you've got all these different, and they look at that. We have to be able to look at it right across the piece and understand it to the degree where we can do our job. So this constant cycle of having to keep up to date, not just in the security industry, but in technology in general, can be a challenge, can be very difficult. And so there's also that element to it. But yeah, absolutely. I've coined something called FOGO. So we've got fear of missing out. We've got like fear of getting owned, and that's what it is for me. It's like everybody who works in the blue team is there to stop something like that from happening. So you always, for example, I'm always checking Twitter. I'm always checking the news feeds. My phone blows up. So because you want to make sure that you're always as ahead of the curve as much as you can be, you always got the best opportunity to do your job well. So you really have to stay on top of that. You really have to check yourself quite often to make sure it's not running away with you, because especially if, like you said before, Mike, you're really passionate about this stuff, it's hard to pull your head out of it and just give yourself some time. You need to be able to check yourself and make sure that you're not getting too stressed out, that you're not going to get burnt out and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's why I think mental health in the security industry at the moment is one of the big things that everybody talks about, because if it's left unchecked, it can be very bad. So
yeah, that brings up a good point too with the mental health. I mean, I just recently lost a friend of mine in Texas that was in the industry. And I had just talked to him right after Christmas, and then I got a message from one of his coworkers that he had passed. And we see that across the industry. Like it's a real problem because it is a fast-paced industry, and there is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to keep up with the technology, a lot of pressure to keep up with the exploits, and it's a lot of work. And some people don't have that outlet or don't know what to do with it. So there's a huge push in the industry right now for mental health. In our Discord server, we actually have a channel just for mental health. People are struggling or whatever. Mm-hmm. So another thing too, I know I introduced you to one of our mutual contacts to talk about maybe helping kids. So that's something that I'm pretty passionate about when it comes to kids who are like problematic and probably going to go down the wrong path. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of work with them and the Met Police in London. So tell me your view on, what's your passion with that, and how the capacity you want to get involved with helping, kids come into the industry and really learn and grow with what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, given what you said about my background, I could have quite easily gone down a different way. There was that intervention from the ISP, I guess, if you like. If it hadn't for that, who knows? So I think I've just been really lucky that happened to me, and I always kind of promised myself that I'd pay that back, if you like, so always looking for different opportunities to speak to, not just young children, but obviously they're the main people that get into it. But there's other people in this industry that just decide, I'm just going to go down this path. So anyone that will listen, basically, I'll try and talk to them and let them know that there's other ways to put their creativity and their curiosity to good use without having to, risk going down that path, really. So I've done a number of talks for schools and introduce people to the different types of teams that they could get into, whether it's red team, blue team. There's really that many teams that somebody can get into it. So it's really making it attractive for them and showing them why staying legal and commercial and if you like, going down that route is a better option than the other path. So yeah, really passionate about that and just make sure that they put their creativity and everything to good use.
Yeah. So Tramy, a question for you, and you can follow this up as well, Steve. Ideal job, your dream job in cybersecurity. Go.
I feel like I'm in my dream job in cybersecurity. I love being on the offensive side. I love just working with the hackers. I because I learned so much, right? I don't need to know all the details, all the attacks and exploits, but for me, it's just super interesting because I use the internet. I have seen, the internet grow and how we're so tethered to technology or phones and different screens. So for me, it's almost like naive to neglect where it's going, and security is such an important thing. So I feel like this is my dream job because I get to use my creativity, my graphic skills, my marketing, and help tell a story in the industry that is so gloomy and dark. So I feel like I can kind of I get to come from like a positive space, like, hey, yes, there are bad actors out there. So how can we help people protect themselves? And penetration testing is one of them. So I kind of like the contrast because I'm just really bubbly and nice, but it's cool that I get to work on the offensive side and kind of like learn how to like switch gears and get into the mindset of like a threat actor, right? So I love that. I feel like I'm in my dream job right now.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think very similar to Trami, to be fair. I'd say that it's where I am now, and not just from a career perspective, but just, I mean, where I am with the ability to be able to give back. I've had a career path and a plan of where I wanted to get to, and that has really taken me to where I am now, to the point where I can now do other things. I can, do the mentoring. I can do these podcasts that I haven't done previously, and start to really give back. I'm lucky that my role allows me to do that, and specifically to the role, I love the fact that I've got the hands-on technical side of things because I love being technical, I love being in the weeds, but I also get to manage people as well, because it's, as I say, it's about the people. So it's great to be able to manage people and help them to grow and learn and also learn from them myself as well. So yeah, hands-on. I can do the strategy side of things. So really bits from all over. And then I get to, I'd say go home, but I'm always at home now, unfortunately, because of COVID. But I get to log off from work and then come on and do things like this, and hope to give stuff back to people as well. So yeah, for me, just in a generally a good place from that perspective, that work is the role that I've always wanted, and I've got all this other stuff that I can do as well. So
yeah, absolutely. The dream job that I would have, I think, is this podcast. Really, it's given me an outlet and a platform to speak from and really work with people. So we have an 11-year-old sometimes that comes onto the podcast and hangs out with us in Discord. Really sharp kid. I've talked about him a million times. It's amazing. But to see that level of knowledge and advanced skill set at such an early age is shocking. And it goes back to what Trami said about, the internet technology's come so far. I mean, when you look at a cell phone, if it's in the palm of your hand, and it literally has more computing power than the first supercomputer. So it's both, like a really exciting time, but it's also a really scary time if it's not handled correctly.
For sure.
So yeah, any other questions that you may have, Trami? I'm going to open up the chat here in a second. Same rules apply as always. No disrespect, no whatever. Please act professional in the chat. And we'll go from there.
Here's Ryan. Hey, mate.
Hello. Hey, man. How you doing?
How's it going, Ryan?
How you going, Trami?
Ryan's always living the dream over there.
He's got the dream job there.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm good looking at you. Okay, so I've got a question. Can I jump in with a question? It's from Fiona. She's got a bit of a bad connection, but it's there's been so many references to ethical hacking. Given the ethical landscape is constantly shifting in response to social dynamics, what does this term mean to you, and how do we keep the ethical dialogue open and alive so as to maintain a process of self-reflection and accountability?
Wow, awesome question. So, assuming that one was for me, I'll take a stab at that.
That's you, man.
For me, yeah. Okay, cool. So, I think it's It is difficult. I think that you've got the legal side of things that, you know, changes, and we've seen people get kind of arrested for bug bounty type stuff. So they think they're being ethical, and to them they're not doing anything malicious, and then suddenly before they know it, you know, they've got people kicking the door down and arresting them. So I think it's really difficult from that perspective. And I think also, and we had a little bit of a chat about this in the Discord last night as well, it's difficult to be if you're an ethical hacker, then you're already on the back foot, because, you know, the real threat actors aren't ethical. Okay, then people are attacking hospitals, you know, with ransomware and you know, these fatalities, or people using COVID to send phishing emails to say that they come within, you know, such distance and they could be infected. There's just, you know, you're not going to. An ethical hacker, you know, the fact that they're ethical, are not going to do those things. So you're already struggling to recreate that attacker's mindset, the attacker's TTPs, because you're boxed. So I think, yeah, it's very difficult to kind of simulate that attacker and be ethical at the same time. And when you are being ethical, when people are getting arrested for it, it's very kind of grey area. So yeah, great question. I'm not sure I have a perfect answer for it, but yeah, definitely need to keep more of an eye on the landscape and the legislation. Yeah, just keep yourself safe, I guess, while you're doing it. And a lot of the things like the bug bounties, and a lot of companies now issue, you know, what you can and can't do. So definitely pay attention to those. If you're trying to go through a system to do a bug bounty and you've not got those guidelines, I'd say move on and go elsewhere, so that you've at least got some legal cover before you do that, and you don't get somebody knocking on your door.
Right. Absolutely.
How do you cement in those guidelines? Like, how do you know they're legit? Like, is there a process you go through to, you know, basically make sure you're on the right side of the law? Or
so from a pen test perspective, from the ethical hacker pen testing perspective, if you're going to go and do that for another company, then you'll generally get, you know, what you can and can't do. You know, in this test you can't do any DDoS. In this test you can't drop any tables if you pop up a SQL server. You can't X, Y, and Z basically. So it's very, you know, it should be quite tight from a legal contract perspective as a pen tester and a red team on your engagement. So absolutely, you know, if you are doing that, the company that you're working for needs to be looking after you and making sure that those terms are very clear in there. And if they're not clear, then you need to make them clear, or stay away from that particular thing that you want to do. Yeah, it's generally down to a contract for I guess a pen tester or a red teamer.
Yeah, it's defining that scope for that assessment, right? So yeah. For me, ethical is I'm gonna talk to you about what I'm going to do, so that you know what to expect. So there's that transparency. Where it falls into the unethical is if you're doing something behind my back that we didn't talk about, right?
Yeah.
So there's a good story about that, right? About scope and scope creep, and, you know, doing things that are like questionably like unethical. A couple of friends of mine from Coalfire got arrested last year during a pen test when they carried out a physical assessment on a courthouse. Well, the court didn't clarify things with the local police, and there was a mix-up in communication. So they compromised this building in the middle of the night and got arrested for getting into the building. So that's another thing too. Like, contracts are really important when it comes to understanding, you know, the scope, because the scope may be very defined, but if other parties that may not be privy to those, you know, don't get that information, it could be really sticky. So for Steve, I got a question from Mohammed. What's been one of your biggest achievements that you're proud of?
I think kind of what about where I am now, being able to do the mentorship, you know, having the confidence in myself to know that I can talk about these things and pass that knowledge on to other people. I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of, and being able to talk to, you know, the children in the schools, and you're never going to know, I guess, whether or not you've stopped somebody from doing that. You can only hope, but, you know, the fact that you're there saying it is something. And possibly something else as well. I know you've only asked for one, I'll give you two. The other thing is I do a lot of open source intelligence search parties. And I've blogged about that they're on my blog, and really proud of the fact that I've got the kind of skills to be able to do that, and I know the people that can join me on those teams to be able to do those open source intelligence search parties. And for those that don't know what that is, definitely go and have a look at Trace Labs. Fantastic team of people out there. There's Ryan. I know Ryan's all over with Trace Labs, but they basically have captured a flag type contest, but with this there's a bit more seriousness to it. So basically what will happen is you'll join the open search party, and you're basically given real missing persons cases. I think there's varies, but normally around 10 missing people missing people from the law enforcement officers, and your job is basically to use open source, use the internet, use Google, use any kind of tool at your disposal legally within some guidelines. Going back to what we say, they issue some guidelines of what you can and can't do. Very important. And your task basically is to see if you can find any information that may be able to help locate that person for the family of the person that's gone missing. So you going, Ryan?
So have you ever experienced any vicarious trauma from your experience with OSINT? Like, I know that myself personally, I discovered a suicide note that was hidden on a gaming server. Have you come across this, and how have you dealt with that? How have you worked through that process?
Yeah, even if you don't come across something like that, just the fact that this person is missing, and you see who the family are, you're looking through news stories, you're looking on the Facebook page, and you're seeing the last thing that they posted, things like that. It's hard going. It really is a kind of when I jump into those, and again, I've got this, I've blogged on this, but I throw my headphones on, don't let anybody come into the room that I'm in, and just kind of zone into it, and then at the end of it, I take my headphones off, and you're just absolutely exhausted, just mentally drained. You need to go and decompress and do something fun, whatever it is, because I have come across things like that where, you found out that the person, unfortunately, is not alive anymore, or even just sometimes it's the unknown. You don't know whether or not this evidence. So as part of the search party, you submit the evidence to the evidence board, and then that's collected by the Trace Labs team, and then taken on to law enforcement for them to take that action, hopefully actionable intelligence, and help them to aid their investigation. So even if you don't come across something like that and there's no closure on it, for me sometimes it's the not knowing, what I've done something, but I tend to just spin that back as positively as I can and say, look, I don't know, but let's just say that what I've just spent that 4, 5, 6 hours doing, that one piece of information that I found or my team found and put forward could make the difference to somebody's life. So I think, back to Mohammed's question, awesome question, that, thank you. That's probably up there with some of the things I'm proud of the most, I think.
That's awesome.
Okay, next up we've got something old. From something old today, we're going back to our DevOps experience from last fall. And we have Orit Golowinski, who's going to be talking about the DevOps journey. Here now is Orit.
Today we're going to talk about the DevOps journey. My name is Orit Golowinski, and I'm the Senior Product Manager of the Progressive Delivery stage at GitLab. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, my name is Orit Golowinski, and I'm the Product Manager of the release stage at GitLab. I'm also an ambassador of the DevOps Institute, I hold a BSc in computer engineering and an MBA specializing in data systems and cybersecurity. I have over 15 years of experience in the high-tech industry, and previous roles that I've held have been Director of R&D Infrastructure and Director of QA. On a personal note, I have 3 girls, and I'm also a certified pastry chef, but I never actually worked as one. So let's start from the history. So in the past few years, the development process has become more efficient. Teams began to analyze their processes top to bottom and detect bottlenecks in the software development lifecycle. They were being exposed and recognized. Teams realized that by changing their software development processes and improving communication, they could deliver high-quality software faster. Agile, which was introduced in 2008, started to gain popularity, and many teams and organizations started adopting and implementing it. This helped them dig deeper into their development processes and understand their deficiencies and enable them to try new approaches and experiment with new ideas that produced new methodologies and strategies. The Agile methodologies included an iterative approach, which focused on collaboration, customer feedback, and small, rapid releases. Agile is different from other software approaches because it focuses on the people doing the work. Everything revolves around collaborations and learning and improving. But something was still missing from this process. So despite close collaborations, Agile still lacked on a few fronts. Mostly developers had to handle most of the pressure, and system administrators had a little room to contribute. Moreover, due to a lack of proper documentation and rigorous commitments, projects could easily fall off track. Something had to come up and bridge all these gaps, and so the concept of DevOps emerged. The DevOps concept separated the software development lifecycle into different stages, which you can see in the slide, creating a continuous process for a repetitive development and deployment tasks. DevOps means adjusting your business to meet growing challenges such as scaling, load, cost, and efficiency, ensuring high availability and designing for failure. Adopting DevOps means solving those challenges by increased value-driven deployments, reduced complexity, and increased automation. So DevOps is a somewhat abstract concept that focuses on a few key principles. We'll start with the first one, speed. So the application, development process, and release capabilities need to remain extremely fast in order to better adapt to customer needs, changes in the market, and new business goals. DevOps attempts to keep things moving along rapidly, so companies can maintain the constant pressure necessary for modern development, including rapid releases, and that's why practices like continuous delivery and continuous integration make it possible to keep up that speed up and throughout the development and operation stages of our project. Reliability. So continuous integration and continuous delivery techniques also improve the overall stability and reliability of the software and the platform. This ensures that user experiences are optimal, while allowing the team to rest easy knowing that the application is as robust as it can be at every stage throughout the software development lifecycle. Integrating automated testing suites and powerful exception handling software help the team identify problems immediately, so they're alerted of any unforeseen issues as they happen. Rapid delivery. So DevOps aims to increase the pace and frequency of new releases, allowing the team to improve the software as often as possible. Performing frequent, fast-paced releases ensures that the turnaround time for any given bug fix or new feature release is as short as possible, providing the maximum benefit to users. CI/CD are necessary for meeting the rapid delivery needs of most DevOps models. Next, we'll talk about collaboration. So DevOps strongly encourages collaboration throughout the entire development lifecycle. Every team member is encouraged to take ownership and to be accountable for aspects of the project which he or she are involved in. This leads to more effective and productive teams, reduces mistakes, and even improves job satisfaction. Both system administrators and developers collaborate throughout the project by sharing responsibility and workflows. Collaboration even extends beyond the organization. Improved collaboration also includes users, customers, clients, and other third parties. DevOps encourages the team to work closely with users throughout the development lifecycle while producing a more polished final product. This also dramatically reduces time and money that might have been wasted by rerouting production features based on user feedback. So security. Security encourages strong security practices by automating compliance policies. Security is no longer an add-on, it's a must-have design feature. Blending in security in DevOps will not only enhance the impact of DevOps, but also eliminate a ton of more bottlenecks that could arise otherwise. With a rise in the frequency of cyber threats and tightening regulations, adding security to DevOps is not a choice now, it's definitely an obligation. Scalability. So this is last but not least, scalability. DevOps also heavily focuses on creating application and infrastructure platforms that scale quickly and easily with an ever-changing demand of the user and business needs. Ideally, such scaling processes should be automated and reliable, giving software the ability to adapt on the fly when a sudden marketing effort goes viral or a cool new feature is released. Practices like infrastructure as code are becoming popular, which emphasizes the importance of provisioning and managing infrastructure components using code and other development techniques. By implementing these scaling practices, DevOps aims to improve the creation of all development, testing, staging, and production environments and makes the process efficient and repetitive. So everything sounds really nice, but there's still a ton of barriers that organizations face when they decide to enter the DevOps journey. So DevOps has seen an incredible growth across organizations in a very short period of time. Many software and IT ops teams have adopted DevOps practices into their work cultures to help them evolve into a faster and more innovative version of themselves. As with any significant change from a traditional development workflow, DevOps also introduces some challenges that organizations need to overcome when deciding to join the transformation. The main challenge of moving into DevOps is the human factor and overcoming conflicts between teams that were not used to collaborating. So we'll start talking about each one of them individually. The first one is the change in culture. The workplace culture undergoes a major amount of transformation while implementing DevOps. It's also one of the most difficult areas of transformation as it is a long-term process, which also requires a lot of patience and endurance, and you're usually going to be faced with resistance to change. Transitioning to DevOps can seem scary to many team members and key stakeholders. People tend to prefer working in their own comfort zones, and any change can make employees less productive and also affect their psychology. Some people just aren't comfortable with working with a new or a different team. The next challenge is the plan challenge. So adopting DevOps can prove to be really challenging for workers who blindly follow guidelines and stay stuck to rules, or for companies which follow specific guidelines for software development, as DevOps doesn't really have a fixed framework, and it's a lot of experimentation needed and learning and changing and fixing and trying new things. Employees can often lose sight of themselves when there's no set fixed guidelines. Another challenge that is related to plan is measuring the ROI. So measuring ROI in DevOps is not really straightforward, but we're going to talk more about that in a couple of slides. Budget. So it's really important to, when you think about DevOps, not to think that open source automatically means that everything is going to be free of cost. There's another cost of integration of different tools, operational complexity, and that needs to be added to your overall costs, and should even include training or even bringing in a DevOps or Agile coach to assist with the process of the transformation. One of the biggest challenges, again, around the human factor is the skill set. A change from the traditional model where ops teams were in charge of infrastructure and deploying to production now changes where each team needs the knowledge and of the infrastructure, the production, and the part of the CI/CD process. To add to that, the technology is continuously changing and it's hard to keep up with it. Having skilled and trained personnel is very difficult, and it's usually one of the hardest positions to fill. A common mistake that companies usually do is just to decide that all the system administrators are not going to be DevOps engineers. But unless your administrators understand software development, automation best practices, cloud tools, and managing modern application architecture, they're probably just not ready yet for this reclassification. Another common mistake that organizations do is deciding that not all the developers are DevOps engineers. But also the developers need to learn release orchestration, the importance of security best practices, ensuring production is protected, a few more layers in the stack below the application, and how scaling and resiliency work. So the best way to overcome the skill set gap is to pay for training, get mentors, and help transform your staff the right way. In return, they'll probably be more loyal to you because you've invested in their future as well as your own. The next challenge is the tool chain. So switching to DevOps practices might make people dependent on various tools that are available to solve even the smallest of the problems. And you may find yourself having a wide set of redundant tools in use, where each team chooses a different tool to use or to use something else or some other stack. This introduces both additional cost and operational overhead in terms of integration of all these tools and training personnel on an arsenal of tools needed for their daily routine. Another, and the last but not least, sorry about that, the last but not least challenge is legacy. So it's really hard to get in a continuous loop of development, testing, and deployment of the state-of-the-art solution when you're working with an outdated legacy system. DevOps runs on agility, and some of the legacy systems don't even integrate within themselves. As a result, the entire IT infrastructure will become less effective and slow. In order to overcome this challenge, newer technologies need to be adapted. Replacing or modifying older monolithic apps with newer microservice architecture can open up the floodgates to faster development and quicker innovation. It modifies the development lifecycle to quickly adapt to changing markets and to customer needs. DevOps is a methodology which requires human efforts and implementation. Companies are working hard to overcome these challenges, to progress their focus on the DevOps implementation. DevOps will optimize your software engineering services, and the discomfort of the change is better than staying behind the competition and not being innovative. So even if you're on your way in the DevOps journey, one of the main challenges seems to be keeping up with technology. Some common challenges to overcome there are transitioning from a monolithic architecture to microservices, moving from on-prem to cloud or even to multiple cloud, infrastructure as code that will help with auto-scaling, continuous delivery and continuous deployment concepts, the entire shift left movement, whether it's security, observability, reliability, scalability, you name it, another challenge. Or even moving to machine learning or artificial intelligence to drive efficiency and gain greater visibility. As DevOps is all about collaboration, and we all know that sharing information and working together to improve performance can be beneficial, why not spread that theory a little bit wider? You may work in a great DevOps team, but your company probably exists as its own little DevOps silo within the greater world. Why not apply the concept of collaboration outside your organization and learn from the wider DevOps community rather than trying to learn everything internally the hard way? If you're a DevOps engineer, you already understand that trends move really rapidly in this area and you need to keep on top of them. One of the ways to keep on top of this is by reading DevOps news sites. Others is collaborating together on open source projects with developers outside your own organization, attending webinars and conferences such as this one, online training, and even more. But one thing that should be avoided is getting excited about the new shiny object. With so many new emerging technology, it's really tempting to try them all out, but it's really, really important to focus and set goals along the way. So after discussing the challenges, your organization decided to move forward with DevOps, but how can you know if the implementation was successful? Is DevOps ROI even a valid question? Measuring the value of change in process is always going to be more difficult than measuring the ROI of, say, buying a piece of equipment or launching a new product. However, without measurements, there's no clear way to know if an organization is improving over time and if their DevOps investments were worthwhile. So I do want to talk a little bit about how to measure a successful DevOps transformation, or how to measure your success along the way. So DORA 4, which stands for the DevOps Research and Assessments, has become an industry standard. It describes 4 key software delivery metrics. The first one is deployment frequency, which means how often your organization deploys code to production or releases it to end users. The next is lead time for changes, how long it takes from committed code to be code that successfully is running on production. Time to restore services, how long does it take to restore a service when a service incident or defect that impacts users occurs, for example, an unplanned outage. And the last one, change failure rate. What percentage of changes to production or release to users result in degraded services and require some kind of remediation, like a hot fix or a rollback? The reason all these metrics are related to production is because it tells you how often you're delivering something of value to the end user and or getting feedback from the users. This doesn't necessarily count how many merge requests every developer does, or how many bugs QA engineer finds. This is all related to production. These metrics are used to tell you de facto how your organization is doing based on benchmark assessments. And some organizations even use these metrics internally as a way to give more responsibility and freedom to high-performing teams, where they get their wings, or in other words, are allowed or not allowed to deploy directly to production based on their DORA 4 performance. Alternative metrics that can be used, because this is still not talking about return on investment in terms of financial metrics, are the ones stated here, but there's a ton of other metrics out there. So the first one is time is money. So DevOps enables more and faster code deployments. That means that this is decreased time to market, and it also gives you more opportunities to capture revenue from customers, and that can be quantified. Financially measuring quality improvements. So this calculates ROI from a cost avoidance standpoint. It considers increased quality of work under the DevOps framework as either increased customer satisfaction or reduced customer abandonment, which can also be quantified into a financial number. Or enhanced productivity. So this is a calculation of idle time and how it's avoided. So the easiest way to measure that is by looking at the number of deployments per day per developer. So they're all designed to show throughput and stability in the development process. The ROI of anything requires a long time analysis, and it involves looking at more than one factor at a time. This kind of multivariable analysis means analyzing the financial impact of DevOps across a spectrum of accounting line items by measuring the amount of time saved over a year in categories like change deployment, automation of repetitive tests, and support, and then multiplying those numbers by the average cost per hour of developers' time. Hard ROI in annual dollars saved can be calculated. DevOps is one of the logical changes that the IT industry needed really badly. It's not surprising that with more and more developments, the need to rapidly address dynamic market needs, its relevance is bound to increase even more in the future. The bridge that DevOps created between development and operations has now evolved into a river of activity where everyone contributes positively. Although it's not the key to all the vaults out there, it can still unlock a lot of opportunities for the software development domain. Organizations that adopt DevOps benefit from high-performing organizations decisively outperform their lower-performing peers. High performers have better employee loyalty. High-performing organizations spend less time on unplanned work and rework and are able to spend more time on the new work, like new features or new code. Taking an experimental approach to product development can improve performance. Undertaking a technology transformation initiative can produce sizable returns for any organizations, as we discussed. And using key metrics can help you quantify potential cost savings. DevOps is a journey, not a destination. It's not a buzzword, and it's easily misunderstood. It's even easier to make a major lasting mistake when starting the journey. So it's best to invest in people. Spend the money necessary to allocate the time to adopt and bring in experts to help. Continuously experiment and make room for mistakes and learn from them. It's important to remember that all the software projects involve a constant stream of change and challenge, and that's why DevOps all revolve around continuous practices. The DevOps journey is an infinite one, but one that is needed to stay relevant in the software field. Organizations that are not able to keep up and constantly evolve and change will be left behind. So that's all for today. I want to thank you for listening to me. I welcome any comments, questions, or any feedback. I can be reached at ogolowinski@gitlab.com or on my Twitter handle, go_Orit. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, next up, our Chief Content Officer, Charlene O'Hanlon, has news around the media ops sites, Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, and Container Journal, as well as a preview of this week's webinars and an interview with Orit Golowinski of I just gave you Orit Golowinski, who was from DevOps Experience, and that was our last. But that is not Charlene's guest today. I was reading the wrong teleprompter. It's Sarah Tatsis of BlackBerry, and she's going to discuss the cybersecurity talent shortage and how women may be the key to filling that gap. Good stuff. Charlene, take it away.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Monday edition of the headlines. First up on DevOps.com, we have an article that looks at the state of digital innovation 1 year into the pandemic. Contributor Bill Dorfeld surveys where we are compared to where we were last year, based on Kong's recently released 2021 Digital Innovation Benchmark Study. The findings stress the importance of rapid digital innovation, open source, microservices architectures, and high-quality practices for scaling today's application ecosystems. Bill brings out the key points of the study that technology leaders need to know, and there are 9 of them, ranging from the unfailing need for quality over speed in application development and deployment to the growing ubiquity of Kubernetes and cloud-native technologies. It's a fascinating look at the landscape and one worth checking out to help your organization better understand and find its place in the market. Next up, we take a look at wireless mesh in communications networks, and specifically a new protocol called Thread. Thread is an IPv6-based low-power open-source mesh networking protocol for connected devices, and it's backed by Nest Labs, which is a subsidiary of Google, and other industry heavy hitters. It's becoming an attractive interface in the IoT space, especially because, being IP-based, it can seamlessly connect to the internet without needing a translator or a gateway in between. There are a number of benefits of Thread that make it more appealing than its counterparts, including Zigbee and LoRa, for example, including no single point of failure, high level of security, and easy setup in the field. For organizations increasingly relying on wireless networks, Thread is a good alternative to existing wireless communication the next few years. It's definitely a technology worth looking into in IT as code infrastructure environments. All right, next up on Container Journal, we have, more DevOps news. In DevOps news, we have information about ASCII, which plans to build a self-healing workflow automation platform built based on an AI cloud service and a super REST API adapter that can establish a connection with any application or platform that exposes an API. ASCII is Advanced Systems Concepts, Inc., not the ancient rudimentary coding language, and its active batch platform will be infused with an AI-enabled preemptive error detection capability to keep track of broken APIs across the web using a cloud-based graph database. Once broken APIs are detected, the Super REST API adapter will create a patch that Active Batch will automatically apply once it has been approved by an internal IT team. This approach will enable developers to spend more of their time building code versus managing APIs via scripts and other tools that need to be supported and maintained. Cool stuff. Okay, now on Container Journal, we have news about the open source linkered service mesh, or Linkerd. So specifically, the organizations that maintain it are creating a steering committee to direct how it evolves. The Linkerd Steering Committee will be made up of organizations that employ the service mesh to manage APIs over multiple Kubernetes clusters, not IT vendors trying to maintain control over an open source project. Linkerd is currently being used by Microsoft, HEB, EverQuote, HP Inc., FinLeap, Connect, Subspace, and Clover Health. Lots of great organizations there. The formation of a steering committee signals a level of industry adoption that requires some management if Linkerd is to move beyond its competitors, which currently include Istio and Kuma. Microsoft, meanwhile, is leading an open service mesh effort that provides an interface through which multiple service meshes might be integrated. The service mesh space is just one of many supporting cloud-native technologies that will continue to mature and evolve along with the market. I expect many more moves as organizations settle on one or two de facto service meshes. I guess we'll see how things fall out. Over on Security Boulevard, we asked the question, is it time for some threat hunting? The past year has seen a number of high-profile attacks, SolarWinds being the latest one, but certainly not the least. And that has made some organizations think about whether they too have been breached and they just don't know it. Enter threat hunting, an information security discipline that searches for signs of a past hack or current hacks by looking for indicators of compromise and other evidence. Telltale files, log entries, and IP access markers could indicate that a network or system has been compromised by a particular piece of malware. It is a tedious technical exercise that takes a lot of time and specific talent, and few organizations have the expertise and knowledge internally. Hiring an outside threat hunting firm often makes sense when it comes to threat hunting, as it also avoids the biases and conflicts of interest that internal teams might have. Regardless of who does it, in-house or hired out, it may be time to consider doing some threat hunting. And finally, we take a look at how organizations can use PKI, public key infrastructure, to secure their IoT environments. Like any advanced network use case, IoT solutions depend on working with fundamentally secure systems and data. That means it's critical to maintain confidentiality, availability, and integrity. PKI has long been a leading standard in internet security and offers all of the capabilities needed to provide a high level of trust and security in today's IoT deployments require. It can be a strong foundation to enable organizations to establish and maintain trust and security across IoT use cases. PKI is already in use today in a variety of industries, and as the IoT continues to mature, its adoption will only continue to grow. All right, that's all I have for the headlines for today. Please check back tomorrow. I'll have a fresh batch for you. Until then, please have a great day, and whatever you do, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Sarah Tetsis, who is the VP of BlackBerry's Advanced Technology Development Labs. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time and joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So you, as the VP, are involved in BlackBerry's AI-based security offerings, correct?
Yep, that's true.
So what are some of the things that you guys are working on right now? Love to hear about the technology.
Yeah, sure. So in our advanced technology development labs, we've got a full team of engineers that are really responsible for taking new technologies from ideation to incubation and then to delivery into new products, and really helping BlackBerry create new security innovations. Maybe I'll just go a bit over BlackBerry right now. So BlackBerry's current strategy is to connect, secure, and manage every endpoint in the Internet of Things. And so beyond just securing an enterprise or securing a building, we think about buildings, critical infrastructure, securing utilities, automotive safety, and securing consumers themselves. Okay. And so we really have a broad array of technologies in the cybersecurity and security software and services space. Mm-hmm. And so the Advanced Technology Development Labs is really looking in that to the future of where IoT devices are going, where kind of the automotive industry is going, and we're creating new security technologies to address the safety and security concerns of those new technologies.
Awesome. I imagine some of their kind of projects have maybe changed in focus a bit since the pandemic hit, maybe to kind of focus more on security of IoT devices as it pertains to work from home or remote work challenges or anything like that. Is that something you guys are working on also?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pandemic really plunged millions of workers into this work from home as an alternative, and virtual workspaces as an alternative. And certainly some of our technologies are directly applicable in an environment like that. So things like secure messaging and BlackBerry Desktop, for instance, which is a technology that allows you to connect securely to your workplace environment.
Cool. Well, I love to hear about the advances in AI and especially as it pertains to security. It's really fascinating to me to hear about just how organizations are kind of dealing in the pandemic situation and working from home and enabling their companies or their employees to work remotely and still be as productive as they are. It's been really, I think it's been on a scale of 1 to 10, I think companies for the most part have maybe done about an 8. It's like they've done better than I expected. And obviously there are security concerns that have kind of cropped up along the way, but not to the degree that I think it really could have been. So, and I think a lot of the technologies, such as what the BlackBerry workspaces and a lot of those technologies that maybe before really weren't considered so much as important technologies, if you will, for a lot of organizations, it was kind of a nice to have technology. I think those are now kind of become the must-have technologies to keep their organization safe. So good stuff around that. Also want to talk to you about something because that really has kind of reared its head during the pandemic, and that is kind of the need for more cybersecurity professionals, especially as we are working in such diverse work environments these days. There's just not enough talent out there. And some people say, oh, that's a fallacy. There's plenty of people. And yeah, there may be plenty of people, but they're not the right qualified people. So, what are you seeing in the space, and what do you think is going to be the key to kind of stemming the shortage or filling the gap, if you will?
Yeah, I think there really is a shortage. I think there's a lot of studies out there that are showing that there's something like 4 million unfilled cybersecurity roles, and those are, countable. So I think it's true. Like companies are all having a hard time finding talent to address the gap. I think some of the things that are driving it, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, with everyone going virtual, working from home, I think it's really sped up the expansion of the attack surface from a cybersecurity perspective. And it was already growing, like IoT devices and connected devices. I think we'll be in the 40 billion connected devices in the next couple of years. Wow. And so that's just going to continue to expand. So I think it will even continue to then further expand the need for talent to secure all of these devices and connections. And then also like the scale or the scale of the amount of attacks that are happening are increasing, and it has increased as well during the pandemic. So, I think right now there's something like over 1 billion different type of malware out there, and it's being created at about like 100 million per new pieces per year. So yeah, some of what we're working on at BlackBerry is really around like using AI and machine learning capabilities, because that scope and complexity is so big and the talent gap is so wide. We need automated solutions, and we need machine learning and AI capabilities in order to address like such an overwhelming attack surface expansion, as well as increase in the attacks themselves. So yeah, I think like there is this talent gap, and certainly at BlackBerry we have open positions that we're trying to fill. So yeah, I think it really is a thing, and something that we need for the future is more cybersecurity talent.
Yeah. I think so many organizations do now recognize that they need to go beyond their traditional boundaries or their traditional workforce, if you will, and kind of look beyond those horizons to really embrace a new kind of generation, a new level of diversity among their workforce. And I actually just had another conversation with somebody else she's a CISO over at a managed services provider. And she was talking about how her company is really working toward, they have an entire inclusion and diversity program, and they're really, really focusing on their efforts on having more females kind of join the cybersecurity ranks. And it seems to me kind of a natural that, we've experienced kind of these diversity issues in IT in general. But cybersecurity, it seems like it's become such a large issue with, to your point, the number of open positions that exist right now. Women, should be part of that conversation. They should definitely be part of those, the workers or the employees who kind of help fill those cybersecurity roles. What's your take? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think IT and let's say programming and roles, women are underrepresented, but I think it is even worse in cybersecurity. I think it's just like if we have 4 million open roles, it seems silly to leave half the population kind of on the table. And, these are really good roles too, and in a growing field, and very much like we should be encouraging women to go into the cybersecurity field, I think. The other thing is, like, in terms of getting diversity, I think if you're really looking at cybersecurity and trying to anticipate how threats could happen, like, you need a diverse workforce in order to like anticipate how an attack could happen. Sure. And I think the other thing is, I think the cybersecurity, let's say in cybersecurity, we've kind of made it more of people envisioning things like a hacker sitting there, and then maybe they've got like a hoodie on in their
hoodie. Yeah, exactly.
Right, but that's not what cybersecurity is. So I think we need to demystify it a little bit, And really, it can be a great job for people that want to really make an impact in the world. I mean, there's all this great new technology out there, but if we can't make it secure and we can't make it private and safe for everybody to use, then I don't think that we're going to realize all the gains of that new technology. The other thing is, I think that disproportionately, and COVID has had this effect as well, disproportionately affecting women and economically in terms of people losing their jobs or maybe opting out of the workforce. So I think it would be really great if at the end of the pandemic we said, you know what, we're gonna really get people and women into this field more and have very direct programs to do that. I think the other thing is that cybersecurity has been focused a lot on like the economic impact of like a data breach, right? So like ransomware or, you know, maybe IP being stolen from a company. But there's much worse things from a cybersecurity perspective that I think that cybersecurity professionals could be focused on. So things like technology-assisted gender-based violence is a growing field, and I think getting more female representation in cybersecurity will help to shift that focus. BlackBerry actually sponsored a really great event by the Center for International Governance Innovation in November. And there we talked a lot about technology-assisted gender-based violence, and it's really around like the use of things like deep fakes. We're talking about deep fakes now in terms of like the economic impact, but those deep fakes are also being used to perpetrate violence against women. So having people in cybersecurity within your company to essentially say, here's how all of the threats of maybe using my technology or of our networks, of our privacy breaches, how that can actually affect people. I think it's really important to have a diverse group to be able to look at that.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. And I imagine that having that kind of quote unquote female perspective kind of helps maybe raise the level of not only awareness, but also urgency around addressing those types of cyber threats. So is there anything that your company is doing specifically to kind of help bring in more diversity and specifically more females into IT and cybersecurity?
Yeah, we've done quite a bit. BlackBerry is really focused on diversity and inclusion as well. So we're running programs internally on creating diverse workforce. But I think some of the things that we've done externally, we actually did a really great partnership with the Girl Guides of Canada last year, which was we launched a project which was called Digital Defenders, where the Girl Guides could complete like a set of tasks or activities that introduced the girls to cybersecurity technology. So anything all the way from like 5-year-olds all the way up into the teens, introducing them like through activities like, for instance, there was a paint matching that described how encryption worked. There was a really cool kind of escape room type of idea, and that also introduced things like machine learning. So it was really around getting girls interested in cybersecurity very early as a field, and then being able to promote that curiosity and have that follow through right into high school and later years. So that's an example of one program. And then we're also pretty active in terms of sponsoring like other things like, for instance, Women in Data Science event. We did one in Ottawa. And we, I think I already mentioned the sponsorship on the technology facilitated gender-based violence. So I think the more people see BlackBerry at those type of events, the more they're like, hey, I can be a woman in cybersecurity and find a mentor and move them into the field.
That's great. That's great. Well, I, for one, hope that this pandemic actually brings about a renaissance, if you will, of how organizations really do view their hiring practices and maybe get beyond some of the biases that have existed in IT for so long, and as a result, cybersecurity, and really open their minds, if you will, to just having a workforce that really is as diverse and duplicative of the population in general. So I have great hopes, and the fact that I've had 2 conversations about this topic in the last 24 hours just kind of fills me with optimism that's actually going to be happening. So Sarah, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. And I wish you guys the best at BlackBerry, and let's talk in a couple months again and see what's going on with you guys again. All right.
That sounds great. Thanks so much.
All right. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks again for having me. Everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the Monday edition of the webinars previews. As I tell you every single time, we have a number of great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal. But upcoming are 3 that I wanted to let you know about in the hopes that you can mark your calendar and join us. The first one is happening Tuesday, February 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern at DevOps.com. It's called How to Implement Best Practices for DevOps Test Environments. It's sponsored by Plutora, and it features Mark Hornbeek, who's the CEO and principal consultant at engineeringdevops.com, and Jeffrey Kais, who is the VP of product at Plutora. They're going to take a look at how organizations can evolve their test management environments for software testing and in a DevOps value stream from a basic dedicated environment to a dynamic and efficient ephemeral test environment. Some of the key takeaways from this webinar include logical development phases of test management environments for DevOps, criteria for evaluating each phase of test management environments, and comparing the pros and cons of each phase with customer use cases, plus loads more. So hopefully you can join us for that one. Again, that one is happening tomorrow, Tuesday, February 2nd at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. Okay, next up is Too Close to the Sunburst, a supply chain compromise. This one is happening Wednesday, February 3rd at 11 a.m. on Security Boulevard, and it is sponsored by Immersive Labs. Now, this is a cool one. This is an interactive crisis simulation that uses the Immersive Labs technology to offer up an interactive webinar that gets the entire audience involved, puts them in the position to investigate how the compromising of software in their supply chain impacts the security of their business and what actions, if any, organizations need to take. So this is really really a cool webinar. Part of the outcomes, you'll be able to see the impact of the human element in incident management and response, gain a greater understanding of how decisions in a major cyber attack have a business-wide impact, and experienced a sunburst via the Immersive Labs Technical Lab. So cool stuff all the way around. Definitely mark your calendar for that one. That's going to be a good one. Again, it's happening Wednesday, February 3rd at 11 a.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. All right, the final webinar today is called 50 Million Data Transactions a Day with Cassandra. It's happening Wednesday, February 3rd as well. This one is at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it's sponsored by DataStax. This is a case study of sorts on Lockstat, which uses both geospatial and real-time rules engine engineering in its products and solutions for customers across the government, defense, safety and security, mining, finance, and retail industries. Interesting technology all the way around. It's powered by Cassandra and other open source solutions to provide clients with innovative IoT solutions, such as geospatial risk management for a marine mining company that uses ships to extract minerals from the seabed. So Rhino Goosen, who is the CTO and Managing Director at Lockstat, will be presenting this webinar. He's going to cover how the team decided to use how the team decided to use which open source technologies it decided to, why they decided to use the DataStax Enterprise for their solution, and how their solutions are able to scale with zero downtime. Good stuff. I love to hear stories like that. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that one as well. Again, that one is happening Wednesday, February 3rd at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. All right, that's all that I have for the webinar preview this time around. Join me tomorrow. I'll be back with another look at some of the upcoming webinars that we have happening across the sites. And until then, have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.
Next up, we're heading over to the Analyst Corner, where Accelerated Strategies Group CEO and founder Mitchell Ashley has some great stuff for us. Mitchell, take it away.
Hi, welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group. Sometimes I stop and ask myself, with all the hype cycles that are going on, the things that we talk about, the cloud, digital transformation, you could list 50 buzzwords. Observability seems to be the thing of the day. What really is happening? Are we really doing these things, and how seriously are we taking them? Are businesses really adopting these technologies, or is it a lot of sales and media and other kind of hype? And so I came across a digital innovation benchmark survey for 2021 by Kong. It's done in December and January of this year, that I thought had some pretty interesting information in it, some good data. It's particularly, of course, after a year into this kind of COVID-19 pandemic, economic downturn, all the upheaval that we've had in markets and in our lives too. I thought there was some pretty interesting data that came out of this. One is that 62% of technology leaders fear that they were at risk of being displaced by the competitors who innovate more quickly. So 2/3 of folks certainly see the pace of innovation and their ability to innovate as important. And 51% of them said they could only survive up to 3 years before going out of business, before being absorbed by a competitor, if they're not able to keep up with their digital innovation. So it's on top of mind of many organizations. I know there are many other things going on, maybe just pure survival for some folks, depending on what market you're in and the state of your business. And others may be responding to opportunities that have been created because of the pandemic and change and acceleration of moving to the cloud and performing digital transformation projects. Some of the things that were cited as kind of the inhibitors, limiting factors to innovating quickly and meeting business goals were around complexity of using multiple technologies, reliance on legacy technologies pretty heavily. Kind of like common things. There weren't any real surprises that jumped out of me. But what I was impressed by, and it was a bit of a confirmation for me, because I certainly have seen this. 89% of respondents agree that creating new digital experiences to address COVID-19 business challenges is critical to their business. So that can be anything from, adjusting to contactless services, supply chain changes, just business automation, all kinds of things, any number of things that could potentially impact that. So everyone is dealing with the impact of COVID-19, and not just economic, but again, this can be positive or negative. And interesting also was that almost half, 43% of the respondents said that their budget has or will increase between 1 and 25%. 27% said between 25 and 50%. That's for digital transformation projects. Now, if you've been in the IT world, you're not used to those kinds of increases in budgets. You're usually going down 10% a year or some amount, unless you're in a high growth business or have approved some pretty significant projects over time. So certainly digital transformation, threat to the business, market conditions, COVID-19, all of those have really heightened the investment in technology to respond to the business. And moving fast is a top priority. But I think we can't also forget the customer experience. Our ability to deliver software faster is important. But if we're not doing it in a way that customers are going to walk away with a good experience from us, they're going to go to somebody else. I think there was some data in this report that I thought was pretty relevant too. Anyway, I'm going to put a link to this survey. I think it's super relevant, and I thought it was pretty fascinating. There's a lot more stuff in it, and I've been quoting from it as I'm talking to you. This is their work. This is not our research. So certainly not laying claim to any of it, but want to thank the folks at Kong for doing this report on the digital innovation benchmark. And I think as leaders, we're always looking for others in the industry, peers, benchmarks, just people we can talk to that are like us. Sometimes data is a substitute for that, to be able to at least look at how people are using open source software. How much of legacy applications are part of their infrastructure moving forward. Which, by the way, we have a Open Mainframe conference coming up here in not too distant future. So in February, so be sure to check that out, along with the cybersecurity event. So I'll be speaking at both. But check out this survey, see the link. You can go to actually just konghq.com, and that will get you to the survey pretty quickly there. So I hope you will take a moment to read it, because I think it's very useful. Wish you all the best in your ventures and your adventures. So we will be talking again soon. Take care.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, Devsec Ops, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
We got a special for you today. It's Monday, so we're going to go to Mike Vizard over at Channel Roundup. And Mike has Valtech CEO Doug Murray as his guest today, and he's going to talk about why Cisco Investments and a few other blue chip funds have invested in Valtech and what they're all about. So here now is Mike Vizard on Channel Roundup.
This is Digital Anarchist.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for the throw. We're here with Doug Murray, who's the CEO from Vaultix. I don't think it's a household word. A lot of people don't know what the company's all about, but there's a lot of money pouring in from a lot of interesting folks. Doug, welcome to the show.
Mike, good to see you again.
So you guys are trying to solve cloud native security, which I guess could mean a lot of things to a lot of folks. So what's the scope of the problem and the challenge?
Yeah, the scope of the problem is really rooted in the application and network side of public cloud. So if you take a step back for a moment, so I was previously CEO of a company called Big Switch Networks, as I'm sure you recall. And a little over a year ago, we sold the company to Arista. And following the acquisition, I was contemplating what I wanted to do next. And clearly for me personally, it sat squarely within the realms of public cloud. I see that clearly the next decade here will be dominated by mainstream adoption of public cloud, and I wanted to do something that was a complex problem in that space. So, fast forward in time, I had the opportunity to meet with the three founders of Vaultix. Very impressed, remarkably intelligent and experienced engineers and architects who had a vision regarding how to take cloud native design for a true platform, not just a feature in public cloud, and solve for network and application-based security. As you know, security is remarkably fragmented today. So you have a lot of companies that focus on very specific pain points. You have people that focus on the user side, some elements of what Gartner calls SASE. You have others that are focused obviously on client, on data center, all these other attributes. And really what they saw was this emerging trend relative to threat vectors in public cloud regarding ingress, east-west traffic, and egress from one's given account. So, I did a lot of research on it. The space is incredibly underserved in terms of technology players today, and we see a great road ahead for the company.
So are you focused on at the point where data moves into the cloud and comes out again, and trying to make sure that that piece of the equation is secure, or is the ambition broader than that, or kind of narrow it down a little bit for me?
Yeah, let me break it down for you. So it's really focused on, so step one is it's public cloud oriented, right? So today as a company, we don't have technology products or roadmap that's focused on-prem other than on the partnership side. So we sit squarely in public cloud, and we're multi-cloud. So the platform is live today across AWS, Azure, and GCP. And so once traffic goes into AWS, customers today have obviously workloads and applications that are sitting in different regions and different clouds. And when we look at the applications themselves, the first thing we do is we assess so first of all, where are the applications? How are they connected from a networking point of view? So it's a very networking and application-centric view of security. And so how are they networked and connected? How many VPCs do you have? How are they interconnected? Do you have transit gateways? Do you have VNets in Microsoft Azure, et cetera, et cetera? And so then based upon that, we work with the customer to determine relative to the various threat vectors, as an example, if they're a healthcare company, if they serve end users that are healthcare providers, ensuring things such as the fact that customer records, patient records, or account information doesn't leave their account. So it's ensuring that their accounts themselves within the world of public cloud are as secure as they can be.
All right. And how do you determine all that? I mean, are you dropping agent software everywhere? Are you pulling up through APIs, or how did you kind of find all that info, as it were?
Yeah, so great question. So that's one of the things that drew me to the company. The founders didn't have this concept, which was you have app firewalls, IDS, IPS, NPS, et cetera, in data centers today. Let's just repeat that and come up with a firewall for public cloud. They thought about it in a much deeper sense because they're incredibly deep architects. Former fellows have founded several different companies and have been remarkably successful, and have a lot of networking and experience and patents. So they started to logically look at this as not only as with a security mindset, but also with the attributes of the early days of SDN, logical constructs such as the control plane and the data plane are logically separated in the platform. So the way to look at it is it is a cloud service. So it's not a box, which is obviously what you would do on-prem. You'd have a a firewall from a leading vendor like a Cisco or a Palo Alto Networks. You would then manage that accordingly, manage policy, you'd manage how you deal with workflow, how you do troubleshooting, how you do upgrades of that device. In the public cloud sense, you're responsible for policy. So the controller is a SaaS-based service. You create policy. Everything below that in terms of the control plane is actually done native within the customer account. So in other words, your data doesn't leave your account to employ security services. So by designing it that way, the first thing that we do is, and the platform is rooted in not just defending, defending and remediation. The platform is focused on what we call the 3Ds. So the first is discovery, the second is the deployment, and the third is defense, right? So defend itself. In the case of discovery, we're using APIs. We're hooking into the customer's infrastructure to determine how they're networked. And of course, when you look in mid-market in particular, over the last 2 or 3 years with shadow IT and people just in early days of AWS and Azure, a lot of Wild West, even just giving an inventory with respect to the applications, where they sit, how they're connected, and is security turned on at all? Like, do you have, exiting your account, do you have a firewall? Are you doing any sort of analysis, or is data just leaving your account and going out to public, other places on public internet or to past services? Just to be able to identify that for customers, especially with compliance being so important these days.
So where are you right now? Does the platform exist? And it appears you got some new funding. So what's the goal for the funding?
Yeah, so the company achieved Series A back in 2019. And at that point, it was really the next 12 months was focused on product execution. So very little was done in the way of marketing, go-to-market, sales ramp, and so forth in that first year. So in that first year, the focus was hone in on the architecture, refine it, go live on AWS, and then there was some pull immediately to go into Azure as well. So entering 2020, ironically, as the pandemic hit, that's really when the platform went live on both Azure and AWS. So the company was really focused on product and technology and getting pre-customer feedback, alpha, then beta, and going through that process going into 2020. Early in the year, we started to then hire the first few sales reps, start to onboard initial customers. So today, while it's still early on in the journey, we do have paying customers across all 3 of the major public clouds. What we see is a fairly aggressive timeframe in terms of initial discussion with a customer as the pain points that we address, from initial discussion to them consuming the product. Our sales cycle right now is actually less than 90 days, which, when I was doing analysis on the company and looking at, is this the next thing I wanted to go after? Look, I think it solves a very specific set of pain points for customers. Compliance is important. People in public cloud want something that's multi-cloud, that is a service, so it's much easier and more effective in terms of just use and flow. And then, I wanted something that was not a roadmap item that could be built in 18 months. I think the largest challenge for the company right now is the fact that it's a younger company. We haven't done much in the way of sales and go-to-market. And really, the next 18 to 24 months is really going to be focused on not only continued product execution and making the integrations work with Datadog, Salesforce, Splunk, a lot of the platforms that we work with today. Those workflows even better, but also building out go-to-market, which includes our partnerships with not only the resale ecosystem, cloud partners, cloud resellers, and now our new relationship with Cisco.
Is this a platform that I'm going to access through a GUI and kind of appeals more to security people, or is there an API that's going to let people kind of meld this into some sort of DevOps or Devsec Ops workflow?
It's a great question. So the initial thinking was, let's go after very, very large, more Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 accounts, get to the CISOs, get to the security teams. And while the initial discussions were had around those specific sorts of end users, what was remarkably clear was that in the the initial customer base, the initial adopters of this, where it was a persona of customer who was a little more mid-market, maybe a tier 2 financial services company or a smaller healthcare provider or retail providers where they have been in the cloud for some time. Like they have made cloud design, cloud native architectures a core aspect with respect to how they actually deploy their applications today. They're not new to AWS. They're not new to Azure. And when we meet up with them, this pain point is something that resonates very quickly and deeply with them. And today, before Vaultix, they basically have 2 ways to do this. One is they could take whatever provider they were using on-prem with their existing firewalls, take a VM version of that, throw it up into AWS and try to make it work in some way, shape, or form. In essence, try and have that same experience on-prem, which is really not why you want to go in the cloud in the first place, but that is an option. That's one. The second is, the CSPs themselves, like, AWS has introduced a very lightweight firewall. There are, the CSP paths. So if you're more SMB or just entering mid-market, that might be okay for you. But there are others that, obviously want a lot more, feature richness in terms of, platform itself, security adoption, additional security services, and of course, your multi-cloud. So that's the other way, CSP. And what's interesting was we've seen customers in spaces like retail and healthcare doing things so unnaturally as we looked at the first few sales. One of our first customers was a customer that was taking, from a regulatory perspective, samples of traffic. So they were hairpinning traffic from their AWS instances on-prem to firewall services so they could ensure from a compliance perspective that they were compliant. And when we showed up and were able to have a discussion with the customer saying, well, wait a minute, take a step back here. What if we could show you a way where we could have a product that you can buy, you're an AWS customer, that you can buy through Marketplace, where you're actually providing the same level of security and actually maybe even some more additional features that we could provide as well that reside actually natively within your account. Would that be something you'd be interested in? And that went from initial discussion to getting the technical win within a week, and the customer then starting their process of going live on the platform within 30 days. And it was surprising to me that you have customers that have been in the journey now for 12, 24, 36 months that, their initial process was, which cloud do we pick? Are we going to be Terraform? How are we going to design? Is it DevOps? Or what kind of workloads are we going to retain on-prem? Once they get through all of that and they get in production at larger scale in public cloud, this actually becomes a fairly significant pain point. And we've even had some prospects that we're in discussions with now. When you discuss with them, hey, how are you securing egress for the traffic leaving your account? They take a step back and say, I thought because it was in AWS that it was already secure. Right. So it's already, you're starting to have these discussions about new threat vectors, new landscapes, and things that really fundamentally need to be secure.
We hear a lot about the term shared responsibility in the cloud, but it feels to me a lot of that is, it's like watching a bad baseball game where the ball keeps dropping between the left fielder and the center fielder. So what's going on with that? And are we making any real progress, or is shared responsibility a little too much no responsibility?
Yeah, shared responsibility is tough. I concur. That was one of the reasons why we saw with some of the early discussions with very, very large institutions, it was ripe with complexity. You're bringing in some cases, there's a cloud team. In other cases, it's a unified team, but then the cloud team wants to bring the security team in that was, the team that in essence was deploying their original, firewall devices and intrusion detection devices and the like, right? So that's created a very complex structure, which is why for us, the initial quick wins that we're seeing as that world continues to develop, just in terms of responsibilities and which throat is going to be choked, if you will, is, in the mid-market, you have a lot of shared cloud team responsibilities, or companies that they are now 100% in public cloud. Like they might have had one data center. They're now in the process of, they've been in the cloud for 2 years. This is their future. The legacy just remains on-prem and is largely being sunsetted. And then everything in public cloud, then people are aligned on that. And they might have one security person. Some of our customers, they don't really even have a security person. They have somebody that's wearing a security-ish hat, and that's their role. And they have to roll up to the CIO or the CISO with, here's a report to show that we're being compliant. But in that case, it's really not as much a shared responsibility. They are the one throat to choke. So what we've seen is that the mid-market or even smaller enterprise, and smaller enterprise being could be thousands of employees at that enterprise. In that case, it tends to be smaller teams. It tends to be people that are stretched. It's people that want to use Terraform. It's people that want simplicity. They want something that literally is a service where they don't have to do upgrades. When we're about to go from our 2.5 platform to our 2.6 platform, when that goes live, everybody goes live on 2.6. There's not an arduous process where we have to give the 2.6 release to customers, do a transfer of information, and have them spend planning cycles, and then on Sunday from 4 to 6 a.m. do upgrades because their firewalls are in line and obviously paramount for them. It's something we do for them, and we think that's remarkably advantageous. So, that shared sense is something where we saw clearly slowed down customer adoption and sales cycle. So, while that world continues to evolve and people get more and more use and public cloud becomes more pervasive, I do think the cultural aspect of that, in terms of the internal dynamics of companies, will be forced to change. And I think you'll see that over the next decade.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about shifting the control plane and the management plane for security into the cloud before the pandemic, but it was kind of this nascent motion. Do you think the pandemic kind of accelerated that shift because the security teams were working from home as well as the employees? And so there was this sudden realization that maybe this is the only way to go?
I think on the user side, which is, an area that we don't address today, but if you look at the user side of security, absolutely. So I think that has clearly had an impact to, the acceleration of adoption of security in public cloud, the move relative to controls into public cloud. I do think the pandemic has had an impact there. I think on the application side and network side where we sit, I think while we are the beneficiaries, if you will, of that, meaning as people now accelerate their move into public cloud, they're now finding more pain points. One happens to be what we do, but I do think there are other elements of public cloud where the pain points in the journey in the first several chapters of moving to public cloud then get solved. Then you enter this next wave of challenge. And I think that's squarely where we sit. Typically our buyer is not somebody who, has a vision of going to, public cloud over the next 5 years. 99% of their workloads are in data centers today, and they're going to start the process of migrating over the next 2 years. I think they will be customers, but I think the journey with them will be much longer. Our sweet spot are really more customers that are either born in the cloud to start, or customers who have really had, they've had an edict now for several years that, cloud first is a priority for the company in terms of their IT infrastructure for DevOps and how they're looking at security.
Do you think that this shift to multiple clouds is going to force that issue? I think a lot of people are like, when they have one cloud, they're kind of like, yeah, we'll just go with the basic security stuff that the provider gives us and we'll augment that. I think, or it feels like once you start dealing with multiple clouds, you don't really want to have 3 or 4 different security frameworks. You kind of want to be able to apply that in a more consistent manner. So is the issue going to be forced?
I do think the issue is going to be forced. It'll be forced for several different reasons. So one, to your point, similar to what we see, and whether you can unpack public cloud and look at data warehousing, you can look at monitoring, you can look at pretty much every element within public cloud. And the CSPs themselves have a service that does that, right? So they have one, it's very specific to their cloud. The controls, the way they look at it is, can be different across the public clouds, but they each have one. And then you have companies obviously like Snowflake and Datadog and a lot of the other companies who have been remarkably successful, paving the way for companies like ourselves, where you try to provide advanced services that sit beyond that. You focus on federating something in a common experience across public cloud. And I do think, even in the customers that we talked to today that are single cloud, there is that concern that, they do know that it's not just security. There are other elements of how they deploy in public cloud it's clearly different in AWS versus say Azure. And because of that, having that insurance policy of knowing, hey, if I make the decision that we're going to move from AWS to Azure, I want that fungibility. I want to have that flexibility to make that change. And if I just have only focus on lightweight cloud native services, A, is that enough in terms of features and what I need from a compliance point of view? But then secondly, is it enough in terms of multi-cloud? And I do think, it's not as though every customer is going to be multi-cloud. I think for the CSPs, there's going to be a phenomenal business for firewalls, just for specific customer accounts and use cases that only want AWS or only want Azure, or only want GCP. I do think you'll have many other customers, though, that want something a little more feature rich, something that's delivered by a security company, by a company that gets up every day and thinks only about security and delivers a service that does provide that investment protection relative to public cloud. So I do think that hand will be forced. I've talked to a number of clients and prospects where there's an edict that they will be multi-cloud, and so a lot of the customers and prospects I talk to that are these larger ones where they're much longer sales cycles. From day one, they have a policy which is we will be in AWS and Azure, or we will be in GCP and AWS, just as a first-class citizen, because that's where they're taking the company. And I think for us as a company, that plays right into our strategy.
All right. Last question. Is AI going to rule the world here? I mean, how smart can smart get if everything is centralized and all the data is flowing through this cloud platform? Can I throw algorithms at it? And if I do, what's left for me to do?
So unrelated to us per se, because obviously we focus on the security attributes of things, but just as a technologist and an entrepreneur, I think AI is incredibly exciting. I think we have to keep it in check at all times, right? But I do find what's possible in terms of, and pardon me if I come across as just a little bit Pollyannish of sorts. I do think there are impacts in terms of society that could be incredible positives associated with AI, just AI and just what that means for us, just in terms of being able to improve things across not only just technology and what data tells us and the future, but like everything as it pertains to new threat vectors and new attributes in terms of tech overall. It's something that, of course, we should keep in close check.
All right. Hey, Doug, thanks for being on the show.
Mike, appreciate the time. Have a great day.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? Recruit Ops is the new way to source engineering talent. From Media Ops, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
Hey, Mike, thanks very much. Good stuff there. All right, folks, that will wrap up our coverage here on TechStrong TV for Monday, February 1st. As usual, we hope you're well, you're safe, you're strong, TechStrong. We'll be back tomorrow with all fresh content. Don't miss it, starting 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV. We're out.